Commissioner Tigan,
Present.
Commissioner Matthews,
Here.
Commissioner Gwynn,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Present.
Commissioner Nordyke,
Here.
Commissioner Varney,
Here.
Resident Commissioner Villegas,
Here.
Chair Nishioka.
I'm here, thank you. I've asked Commissioner Varney to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. So this is the month that we get to have nominations for Vice Chair of the Salem Housing Authority. Do I have any nominations? Commissioner Nordyke.
Thank you. I nominate Commissioner Gwynn.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Nordyke and seconded by Commissioner Tigan to nominate Commissioner Gwynn as Vice Chair. Any conversation? If not, will the recorder please call the roll?
Commissioner Matthews,
Aye.
Commissioner Gwynn,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Nordyke,
Aye.
Commissioner Varney,
Aye.
Commissioner Tigan,
Aye.
Resident Commissioner Villegas,
Aye.
Chair Nishioka.
Aye. Thank you. Welcome as being the Vice Chair, and you'll get to help me out for this meeting. I'll start out by just saying we don't have any additions or deletions. Do we have any public comment? We do not have any public comment. So, Vice Chair Gwynn, do you have a motion on consent calendar?
Yes, I move approval of the consent calendar, which is January 27 draft minutes, item 3.1A.
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Gwynn and seconded by Commissioner Varney to approve the consent calendar. And Vice Chair has already stated that it is the draft minutes from January 27th. So I think unless there's any discussion, we're ready to call the roll on that.
Commissioner Gwynn,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Nordyke, Commissioner Varney,
Aye.
Commissioner Tigan,
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews,
Aye.
Resident Commissioner Villegas,
Aye.
Chair Nishioka.
Aye. Thank you. We do not have any action items, resolutions, or public hearings, so we are to, or special orders of business, so we are to information reports. Ms. Oots, will you please go ahead with your information?
Sure. My name is Nicole Utes. I'm the Housing Administrator for Salem Housing Authority. Tonight, we just wanted to highlight that South Fair Apartments accessible one-bedroom waiting list will, public notice is on our website. It will be opening on Saturday, March 8th at 9 a.m. and run through March 30th of this year until 11:59 p.m. This is an opportunity to get on our accessible one-bedroom waiting list that very rarely come open. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. We are excited to announce that the rehabilitation of Orchard Park Apartments is coming to a closing this week. We are finally at a point where we can say that one is going to be going into a full rehab. It has been quite a journey with that project to keeping it affordable for this community, and we're very excited to be coming to the closing line and retaining all those 200 plus units at that location for the residents of Salem. Then I wanted to highlight in the program management report, you will see that our agency has been given official notice that we are out of shortfall funding cycle, which is exciting news for our Section 8 program. There will be more to come, even though we're being released from shortfall. It doesn't mean that we have a lot of vouchers available back out there to get back on the streets. But it does mean that we can start accepting some preference waiting list nominations from some of our collaborative partners. And we do hope that that will mean that we get some additional budgetary funding for some additional vouchers that hopefully we'll hear soon on our fiscal year budget. And then I've asked Jessica Blakely to join me. We understand that federal funding plays a crucial role in supporting our initiatives, and we are closely monitoring developments in this area. We can understand that the stress this concern may have on our households and staff alike. We have initiated internal communications with our staff at work to keep them informed during this time of uncertainty. However, as we navigate these challenges, we must remember that our primary responsibility at the Housing Authority is to our 9,000 plus residents that we serve throughout Salem and Kaiser. Their needs include security, quality of life must remain at the forefront of everything that we do. Regardless of the fluctuations in federal funding, the operations and services to our community remain consistent at Salem Housing Authority. Our teams are fully committed to maintaining the status quo and ensuring that the needs of our residents are met without interruption. Our departments continue to execute essential programs and services, whether it's Section 8 public housing or any of our diversified portfolios with our collaborative partners in the community. And we are committed to maintaining our momentum and making sure residents continue to receive the support they rely on from us. As we move forward, we ask for your continued support and focus on the needs of our residents, staff, and community. I do have Jessica Blakely here tonight to provide additional information on our federal programs and funding.
Hello and good evening. My name is Jessica Blakely, and I'm the Director of Development and Strategy for the Salem Housing Authority. As Nicole alluded to, in mid-February, we began providing internal communications to the staff that we thought you may want to know as well. So I'll go through just a few key bullet points tonight and talk to you about our specific programs that may have impact. We have one grant which is currently in limbo. That is the COC Builds grant for $10 million on the Evergreen project. That notice of funding opportunity closed in November, and we have yet to hear from any award, like if anyone has been awarded or if there are any awardees. So we have communications into HUD to find out if this is a program they intend to continue or if we need to seek other funding sources for this project. No worries, we have a backup plan in place. State funding for permanent supportive housing is pretty robust right now, so we would like to just shift our program focus from the HUD piece to the state funding for that. So I don't think there'll be any impacts to the community, but we will maybe have some delays just because we have to switch gears from federal to state. As far as executive orders at this time, there's none that we are currently concerned with. Our federal lobbyists have the programs that Salem Housing Authority is watching and will continue to communicate through the review process. We've been encouraged to reach out to them with any speculation, and they will assist us in finding answers prior to our worry. So we're very appreciative to them. Just for your knowledge, the federal programs that are in play that may or may not be impacted by this administration is our Public Housing Operating Subsidy, our Public Housing Capital Subsidy, our Section 8 Housing Assistance Payments, our Section 8 Administrative Funding, which is our salaries and benefits for our team, property-specific programs like CDBG and Home. Thankfully, we only have ongoing program compliance in those projects. We don't have any open and pending awards yet to be applied to the projects. And then our Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So those are our federal programs that we're watching very closely with our federal lobbyists, as well as our various groups that we work with, like NARO. We also know that Oregon Housing and Community Services had posted on their website. So if you go to Oregon Housing and Community Services website, there is a link on the right-hand side, and it says Federal Impact Programs. So any program where they receive federal federal monies and they pass it through maybe to other agencies within the state, they're watching those closely as well. And so that might be something that you bookmark to look at too, because they're tracking very closely. And that includes programs that maybe SHA does not currently engage in, like the 811 program, some of the other rental assistance programs. And for any jurisdiction that does not have CDBG and home like we do in the city of Salem, they would be getting that money directly from Oregon Housing and Community Services. So we can still keep a peek on it for our city programs. And then finally, our federal advocacy. I'm traveling to DC in March 9th through the 13th, and I'll be meeting with our federal delegation and hopefully some HUD policy folks to discuss, one, our funding programs, which we're eagerly awaiting the March 14th deadline, where the federal government has essentially 3 options, which is to pass a budget, to pass the continued resolution, or potentially a government shutdown. So we're very much watching that time, and I hope to bring back any information to you after my visit to DC, because March 14th will come the day after I come home. We also have our issue with our rents at our rental assistance demonstration program that we have been advocating for about 3 years now, and we think they're close to a program fix, so I'll continue the advocacy around that because those are the projects we need the most funding for. And then, of course, our low-income housing tax credit programs that we have is in the federal tax bill, and we're advocating very heavily to drop the 50% test down to the 25% test. And if you want me to give you a bunch of nerd information around that, I'm happy to do that, but I'll leave that on request so I don't put everyone to sleep. And so, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about specific things, and just happy to be here and provide this report. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for those reports. I know that I wanted to hear what the status was with federal funding, so thank you. Commissioner Tigan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you quantify, maybe for the last couple of years, I think it was 5 or so programs that received federal grant funding? What's the total amount of federal dollars coming into the city of Salem through the Salem Housing Authority in those programs?
It's approximately $43 million.
Okay, and I'm curious, from your vantage point, is there another program in the city of Salem that gets more funding from the federal government than the Salem Housing Authority? Maybe Mr. Martin might be the only other one who might know.
On a federal basis, I'm not sure on the other programs like Public Works or anything like that. I can tell you that we are one of the largest providers for this area.
Okay, thank you. That was the heart of my question. Just want the public to know the degree to which federal money comes into the city through this program. Thank you.
And the biggest impact will be $2.7 million to landlords that we pass through every single month as well. But I do want to say that we also have been front-loaded funding through April, so we are presently in pretty well standing at this point, and we do have a reserve, and we're continually watching everything that is going on to ensure that we have a backup plan in place.
Commissioner Nordyke.
Thank you, Commissioner Tigan. Great question. While we're on the subject of pop quizzes, Director Utes, Marion County Housing Authority, I'm just curious, do you have any sense as to what kind of federal funding they've received during the same time frame?
So just to put in perspective, the Marion County Housing Authority has a little over 1,000 voucher holders for their programs. We have allocation of over 3,000 vouchers at Salem Housing Authority. And then majority, I believe they all have low-income housing tax credit, affordable housing, that I don't believe that they have project-based vouchers in those. But they also have sold off all of their public housing in the past, so it would really be heavily impacting their Section 8 and family self-sufficiency program and their administrative dollars.
So you can't give an approximate number of federal funds?
It would be difficult for me to estimate just quickly offhand. I can certainly find that out and get it to you. We all have different rent structures and allocations that we use what is called a 2-year tool that helps us estimate out how much funding we will receive.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Brown.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So you mentioned that we do have a reserve and there's money in there. How long would that last?
We used to be able to tell you that we could happily have reserves for about 2 months, but due to the rent increases in the area, we're estimating at 1 month to a month and a half in reserves. We typically have those on hand for government shutdowns, just to ensure that our clients can maintain if the government shuts us down and we're not front-loaded any additional funding in anticipation of that. So that will give us enough time to get letters and information out to landlords and to our tenants to be able to get them set up. Basically, during that time, we would be asking for landlords to work with us in keeping those residents into their home with form of commitment that if the government comes back up, that we would certainly make priority getting their back rents to them.
And it would be fair to say that when you come back in March, you'll have a clear answer on like how long it'll last?
I'm not sure I'll have any clear answers. However, the March 14th deadline will have come and passed, so we should have a better update from our federal lobbyist and their team about maybe the climate of what we can expect. I would anticipate that either way, we're going to have to find out if there's a continued resolution, which would keep us at our existing funding levels, or if there'll be another approved budget, which would tell us the deficit. We've been operating on last year's budget this entire time since October 1st. And so, you know, it's really just an unknown at this point, but so long as they pass the continued resolution, we can operate business as usual. It will only be if they establish specific funding cuts and recommendations for cuts that I can definitely bring back to you because they will have to adopt it in both the Senate and the House before it's passed. And so we should have estimates from our national advocacy group, which is NARO, and I'm a part of their legislative committee, so I can bring that back to you.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Thank you both very much for this information, and fingers crossed for March and your continued success. So that then concludes our meeting. It is adjourned.
Technically, your board members.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting of the City of Salem Urban Renewal Agency to order for February 24th, 2025. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Tigan,
Here.
Board Member Nishioka,
Here.
Board Member Matthews. Here. Board Member Gwen.
Here.
Board
Present.
Member Brown. Board Member Brown.
Present.
Board Member Nordike.
Here.
Board Member Varney.
Here.
Chair Hoy.
Here. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight?
Not to this.
Okay, thank you very much. And is there public comment? No, not a thing? Okay. May I have a motion for consent calendar?
Yes, thank you. I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Will the recorder please call the roll? Or do you want discussion? I apologize, discussion?
Yes. So the consent calendar consists of minutes from the January 27th, 2025 draft urban renewal. And we have several resolutions, and I will add a bit of context for the resolutions. In Oregon, tax increment of property tax revenue generated from an urban renewal areas can only be spent on debt. In order for the funding to be available for projects and programs within each area, the agency completes the de jure bond borrowing or overnight borrowing process, the agency enters into an agreement with a bank that loans funds to the agency and is paid back the next day using tax increment revenue. Through this process, we are able to use tax increment funds for purposes other than debt. And so that includes item 3.2A, authorizing the issuance and negotiated sale of Jory Apartments, TIF District Short-Term Subordinate Urban Renewal Bonds, Series 2025. Resolution 3.2B, authorizing the issuance and negotiated sale of North Gateway Urban Renewal Area Short-Term Subordinate Urban Renewal Bond. Item 3.2C, authorizing the issuance and negotiated sale of the Riverfront and Downtown Urban Renewal Area Short-Term Subordinate Urban Renewal Bonds, Series 2025. 3.2D, authorizing the issuance and negotiated sale of the South Waterfront Urban Renewal Area Short-Term Subordinate Urban Renewal Bond, Series 2025. And 3.2E, authorizing the issuance and negotiated sale of the West Salem Urban Renewal Area Short-Term Subordinate Urban Renewal Bond. And then we go into 3.3A action items, which is the fiscal year 2024 Urban Renewal Agency Annual Fiscal Report. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Nishioka?
Aye.
Board Member Matthews?
Aye.
Board Member Gwynn?
Aye.
Board Member Brown?
Aye.
Board Member Nordike?
Aye.
Board Member Varney?
Aye.
Board Member Tigan?
Aye.
Chair Julie Hoy.
Aye. Thank you. We are on to public hearings. We have none. Special orders of business, none. We do have an information report. And is that going to be put on by the fabulous Josh Eggleston?
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer with the city. I'm happy to answer any questions on the Urban Renewal Agency quarterly financial reports. This includes the final report for fiscal year 2024, the final report for quarter one, and then the quarter two financial report. And just to reiterate why we have the final reports is we did issue preliminary reports for quarter four and quarter one because we didn't have the financials closed. They were preliminary, so now these are just the final reports just to wrap up that piece. But happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from anyone? Seeing none. No vote, or information only. Okay, thank you. We have no further business then, I believe, so we are adjourned. Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of Salem City Council, February 24th, 2025. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Tigan?
Here.
Counselor Nishioka?
Still here?
Counselor Matthews?
Here.
Counselor Gwynn?
Here.
Counselor Brown?
Present.
Counselor Nordike?
Here.
Counselor Varney?
Here.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Here. President Nishioka, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, I move for approval of the additions to the agenda.
Second.
Second by Gwynn. Yes, go ahead, President Nishioka.
Yes, so we have some changes to the language for item 5B. Do I read that now? So let's see, so the discussion points is staff provided council with modified.
Counselor, so the addition tonight is just some changes to the ballot title and explanatory statement that we provided to you earlier this afternoon. there'll be an additional change we'll need to make that we'll do later.
So we have some, the additions are some language to 5B.
Okay, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Okay, it's time for council and city manager comment. Did anyone have anything they'd like to share tonight? Yes, Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you. I just want to, one, give a shout out to Public Works and all of the work that they do, especially when we have rain. And I know that, again, incident happened with sewer leakage, and I wanted to just share the Public Works Dispatch 24-hour phone number in case you have something in your neighborhood of flooding or any problems that you see. Please call the Public Works Dispatch, and that number is 503-588-6311. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of shout outs. This past weekend and also last month, the Highland Neighborhood Association, they are participating in peace walks. And I think there's some Highland folks here tonight. And so rain or shine, they are out in the streets, just not only being aware, but bringing attention to it. And so I definitely want to give Highland Neighborhood Association a shout out, and of course to those individuals that serve as first responders. So thank you for that. And also this past weekend, the Salem Art over at the Bush House, it was a good opportunity to see some art on display. And I think also that President Nishioka, she had some art that was on display also. So it was good to see a lot of community people there, and also to have one of our own. And just a phone. So anyway, it was good to be there, to be in that space, and terrific work. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Good news to share? Okay, seeing none. AIC Namburi, did you have something to share tonight?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone. The city has heard concerns from some community members about their immigration status, specifically how it relates to the city and law enforcement. So we want to provide clarity and make sure the community has accurate information. So I have asked Chief Umak to be here to kind of share more details about it. Chief?
Mayor, Councilor, City Manager, good evening. Trevor Womack, Chief of Police. Yes, I put out a statement about 3 weeks ago because of these type of concerns we were hearing. But I think the best resource possible to point everyone to is Oregon DOJ website under the Sanctuary Promise Act. It clearly describes by Oregon law what local law enforcement and state law enforcement are not allowed to do in Oregon regarding immigration enforcement. We are a sanctuary state. We've been a sanctuary state since 1987. And so in that sense, even though there's concern and things happening at the federal level, there's zero change or impact to our department as far as how we interact with federal agencies regarding immigration enforcement, because we're barred by law from doing that here in Oregon. So with that, is there any questions I can help clarify? Great. There's been some rumors and so forth. If anybody has questions, to reach out to us, we'll explain it, but we can't directly or indirectly support immigration efforts here in our city because actually no law enforcement agency in Oregon can do that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for that very important clarification. What is real and what is perceived, what we can do something about and what we can't. And so thank you for being present and for stating that. If nobody has anything further for councilor comments, we're going to move on to proclamations. We have two this evening. One of our recipients was not, last minute, not able to join us, so I'll go ahead and read that proclamation. Julie Fascoli was to be present with us. She's the president of the Women in Construction, Chapter 198. And this is the proclamation. Whereas the Salem National Association of Women in Construction, Chapter 198, has distinguished itself for 52 years as the voice of women in construction in Salem, Oregon, and whereas the work done by the Salem NAWIC Chapter 198 has benefited Salem through community development and educational programs, and whereas the Salem NAWIC Chapter 198 has unceasingly promoted the employment and advancement of women in the construction industry, and whereas the construction community represented by Salem NAWIC Chapter 198 has been a driving force in fostering community development through renovation and beautification projects, promotion of skilled trade careers, and a positive vision of the future. And whereas the Salem NAWIC Chapter 198 has sought to achieve successful results for Salem and surrounding areas in a cooperative spirit with other organizations, and now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Mayor Julie Hoy, do hereby recognize the Salem NAWIC Chapter 198 and its many dedicated volunteers for its steadfast work on behalf of and in support of women in construction, and proclaim March 2nd through 8th, 2025, as Women in Construction Week, and encourage our community to congratulate the organization on its many accomplishments, dated this 24th day of February 2025. So congratulations to them. Now, this next proclamation, these folks showed up in force, literally. So could the Salem Fire Department recipients please come forward? Thanks, guys. Come on up. Chief, come on. You must be so proud. Whereas the Palisades Fire in Los Angeles County started on January 7th, 2025, and whereas the fire burned 23,488 acres, destroyed 6,837 structures, and caused 12 fatalities. And whereas, just as California resources traveled to Oregon during the historic 2024 fire season, the state of Oregon supported California during its time of need. And whereas, on January 8th, 2025, Salem Fire Department Engine 15, staffed with Captain Mike Stewart, engineer Cody Welling, engineer Zach Salvage, and engineer Mike Latch, deployed to the Palisades Fire as part of a Marion County strike team. You guys are choking me up. And whereas, on the first shift assigned, the Salem Fire Department Engine 15 crew saved a home by extinguishing an active attic fire, giving a family a home for which to return. And whereas, personifying dedication to commitment and service, the crew of Engine 15 was deployed for 18 days, serving a community in California that needed their assistance during an inexplicable time. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Mayor Julie Hoy, do hereby recognize the Salem Fire Department Engine 15 staff. Please raise your hand when I call your name. Captain Mike Stewart, Engineer Cody Willing, Engineer Zach Salvage, and Engineer Mike Latch for their dedication to service by deploying the Palisades Fire, and encourage our community to congratulate these dedicated first responders for their work, dated this 24th day of February 2025. Wait, right there.
Mayor Hoy, Council President Nishioka, and all councilors, I just want to thank you for recognizing our members I am constantly impressed and proud of the work that our members get to do every day in this community. And this deployment was certainly emblematic of their dedication. In a moment's notice, they got on a fire engine, they're gone for 18 days. And not only was their service exemplary, but all that experience they brought back to our organization, and it makes our community stronger for when incidents happen here. And I will not prolong it, because one thing they do serve and how they serve is with humility. And so I know I'm embarrassing of them. So I just want to say thank you all, and to each of you, thank you for representing us in the best way.
Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you. Bless you, sir. Thank you. Take good care. Bless you, sir. Thank you. Looks like we have no presentations. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment? Thank you. Okay, I will call your name. I'll call 2 names at a time. The first person, go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes to remark. Please, as you come to the podium, state your name and your ward or your address for the record. When you have 1 minute left, the light on the podium will flash yellow. The light will turn red when your time is expired. So, Larry Ramsey is first, and then Ryan Erickson Kylas, I believe? Kulas, sorry, sir. Okay, so Larry Ramsey is first. Come on forward to either podium. Be sure to hit that button, turn the light green, and state your name.
My name is Larry Ramsey, 283 16th Street Southeast. I was going to comment today on the local option tax and in support of it, but something happened a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know any details, and they don't seem to be available. I've always thought of local politics as somewhat more pure. We're not New Jersey here. But we're getting a pretty good idea with national politics of what happens when developers take over the levers of power, and I don't want to see that happen in Salem. Thank you.
Ryan Erickson Kulas and Marcia Kelly.
Ryan Erickson Kulas, Ward 1. I commend this council for taking the brave steps to continue to move forward with the livability levy and considering its addition on the May ballot. This is a crucial step towards ensuring that Salem remains a thriving city with a strong public resource situation. The reality is simple. The city of Salem faces a $13.8 million budget deficit. That is math, and math doesn't lie. If we do nothing, we risk devastating cuts to essential services. Some citizens have suggested deeper reviews of budgets. We'll hear tonight, but that has already occurred again and again. The City Efficiency Committee, championed by the Chamber of Commerce and composed of local business leaders, found no inordinate waste in the city's general fund operations and in fact concluded that Salem is doing more with significantly fewer resources than the cities of a similar size. This levy is not about excess or luxury. It is about maintaining the very fabric of our city. Our library, our parks, and Center 50 Plus are not expendable. They are essential. Libraries are one of the few resources for job seekers, students, and families struggling with the digital divide. Center 50 Plus provides services for an aging population, which in Salem is rapidly growing. As an avid runner, our parks are a gem of our city, but without funding, they will fall into disrepair. And that is why I'm here to say tonight that putting this levy on the ballot is not enough. It is easy to vote to let the people decide. It is much more harder to stand up and fight for this measure to pass in May. And frankly, the residents of this city need to see true leadership from this council. Ask yourselves, do you want to be the council that lets our libraries close? Do you want to be the council that takes a vital community space away from our seniors? Do you want to be the council that lets our 90 parks fall into disrepair? Mayor Hoy, you raised $300,000 to win your seat. What will you raise to save our libraries, protect our seniors and our parks? Will you ask Larry Tokorski, who gave you nearly $40,000 to put his resources to preserving Salem's public services? Will you ask the Oregon Realtors Political Action Committee, the Home Builders Association of Marion and Polk County, and the Commercial Property Resources, who gave you $90,000 combined to back this levy? Because if Salem loses its library, senior center, and parks, who will want to buy, rent, or build in this city? And if you're not going to fight for this levy, I have to ask why. A grassroots movement has already stepped up to get to this point. I implore you to join them. Do what you must to ensure that this passes in May, because a true leader doesn't just put something on the ballot, they fight to win. Thank you.
We have Marcia Kelly, and then Paige Barton signed up on this sheet, but I don't believe it's a topic for tonight's agenda. So we're going to have to move that to the item 8. So we'll have Marcia Kelly and then David Levy, please. State your name and your ward.
Good evening, Mayor Hoy and members of the committee. I am Marcia Kelly. I live in Ward 2. I'm here to support the livability levy. My spouse and I own a house, pay taxes. We're both seniors, but we're concerned about the seniors in the city who might be worried that they wouldn't be able to pay their taxes or afford this additional levy. I'm here to tell you that you can help promote a property tax deferral program for seniors and people with disabilities that already exists. The state pays the county and the taxing districts for their property taxes. In exchange, the homeowner agrees that when the house is sold, when the homeowner dies or the home is transferred, they will pay back those taxes plus 6%, and so that revolving pool exists. There's approximately $70 million in that pool, so taxpayers could apply for it. And the program is fairly generous. You can earn up to $60,000 in the household. You can have $500,000 in assets. That excludes your house, which is already included in property tax, which includes your car. The details for this program are on the Department of Revenue's website. Part of the thing is that your house is assessed on the real market value, and there's a sliding scale on the real market value according to what county you live in and how long you've been in your house. So I would really urge people to talk to the people who are seniors who are expressing concerns about their property taxes. Put it in your newsletters, put it on the city website, have a program at the Center 50 discussing this program. The applications for this next year have to be filed by April 15th, which is why I'm talking now, and which is why it doesn't work as well if it's put on the property tax bills. So I really encourage you to contact me, the Department of Revenue, or your city or the county assessor's office for details on the program. It's very simple, and it would really help seniors stay in their homes and pay for the services that we do need to provide for them through the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. David Levy and Jesse Prius.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, city staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Levy, and I am the chair of the Library Advisory Board. However, once again, I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and as a representative of a grassroots group that are advocating for the proposed ballot initiative that's going on the May ballot. You've heard a lot from me for the last few months, so all I'm really here to say tonight is thank you. This has been a long process over several months. A lot of community support, a lot of community activity. We're ready to go. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and talk to the public and let them know why our libraries, parks, and senior services in Salem are important and what we need to do to invest. You have a hard decision tonight to make, and I'm glad it's you and not me. But I think once the decision is made, we're ready to move forward. And I want to thank you for putting the time and the effort in listening to us. We're excited to move forward. We've got a very fast 90 days to get this done and get this happen. And again, I appreciate your support in moving this forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. We have Jesse Prius and Mitchell Daly.
Mayor Hoy, members of council, staff, and fellow residents of Salem. My name is Jessie Price, and I've lived in Ward 1 for 20 years. I am a wife, a mother of 2 daughters, an educator, and a community organizer. I have spent 12 years professionally community organizing for the city of Salem through the Neighborhood Partnership Program, until this body ended my program a little over 5 years ago. Anyone who knows me knows that I care deeply about this community, especially my little corner in Northeast. I adore our Inglewood School and Park. I love our library, both the books and the other community services that it provides. I haven't used Center 50 Plus much yet, but I do know a lot of people who depend on that. Despite all of this, I strongly urge you to vote no on referring a 5-year Community Services and Livability local option levy to the Salem voters in May. I believe it would be a waste of everyone's time, energy, and money at this point when it is destined to fail. Mayor Hoy just spent 2 campaigns convincing voters that we needed trust and transparency and no new taxes. She has been in office barely 1 month, and she has already broken all of her promises. 1, she's gotten her hand slapped at least twice for voting to get her business friends' city contracts rather than recuse herself due to conflict of interest. 2, she's had secret conversations with counselors and closed-door meetings about the firing of our city manager at the cost of nearly a year of his full salary, so there goes another $256,000 or so. I don't know what the final number worked out to be. 3, we have recently had another $5 tacked onto our city utility bill. 4, in her search to find all of the mismanaged funds she kept going on about in her campaigns, the team of business experts not only didn't find them, they found that city staff were already operating at a level far above anything that should be reasonably expected for a city of our size. 5, despite the fact that polling was done in regards to this levy showing that it's unlikely to pass, here we are going ahead with deciding to put it out for voters. Please hold the line for now. Rearrange the way we are currently organized, doing some things. Earn back a bit of trust from citizens and make some hard choices. Perhaps next year we'll have some solid plans for a long-term fix that might have a chance at being approved. I know the root of most revenue shortfalls are still due to some very poor political choices that were made back when I was a child, and so I know it won't be quick or easy. I submitted this in a letter, and so I'm not going to be able to read all of it, so I hope that you counselors got it. I went on to explain why my family can't afford it, all of the cost of living things, as well as in the last 5 years, I've been underemployed. In 2009, my husband's city career was ended, his 18-year career, and it took him nearly a decade of underemployment to find his current career. I do have ideas, not just complaints. You can find them in your packet, in the letter, and I have materials available. And again, I want to commend all the city staff for all of the work that they do, and the council for volunteering their time. But I feel like May is a poor timing to waste the time, energy, and effort and money that it would take to put this to voters when I don't believe that it will pass. There are
Thank you for your testimony. We now have Mitchell Daly, and then we're going to go ahead with Paige Barton.
Mayor Hoy, City Council, my name is Mitchell Daly. I live and teach in Ward 1. I am here to voice my support for referring the Community Services and Livability Local Option Levy to Salem voters. You have heard a lot of testimony on the reasons why Salem needs new revenue, so you can count me among those people, but rather than revoice all of those reasons, I want to talk about what happens after the levy is on the ballot, as I think is a likely outcome from today. I have spoken to many people about this levy. I've seen the polling, and know you have an uphill battle, as I'm sure you're all well aware. For this levy to pass, our mayor, this council, will need to have a clear, unified message about the need. There are those who believe Salem's budget woes are a priority issue, that there is fat yet to be cut. I know that we're already hitting bone, and I think the City Efficiencies Committee report actually lends more evidence to the fact that we're not going to prioritize our way out of this current budget crisis. The people of Salem need to hear this from every one of you. This also means making sure that you are the experts on the city's budget. You're going to get questions, likely sometimes stated very unkindly, and you need to be ready to field those questions. You need to be able to talk about PERS, Measures 5 and 50, and funds that are not accessible by the general fund, including grant funds. Finally, I want to voice a concern that I've heard for this levy, and that concern is for property owners passing on the cost of the levy onto their renters. I worry about those who can afford to pay, passing on the cost to those who cannot. I know we're way late in the game for any new language to hit this particular option, but I hope that you can address those concerns in your discussion tonight. And if there are avenues to provide some protection to at least the most vulnerable renters, I hope that you explore those and take them. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Paige Martin, and I'm a resident of Ward 2. Tonight, I'm appearing before City Council to not only offer my personal thoughts, but to provide information as chair of the Marion County Democratic Party. I understand that Salem feels priced out. I think almost all of us do. Before I bought a house in Salem, I experienced the price of rent triple. Right now, my family is working with a single income. When I was working, I was a labor negotiator for public sector collective bargaining agreements. So I know inflation has risen, and so has the cost of labor. Health insurance premiums have increased since the pandemic, and everybody knows about the price of groceries. Things have not gotten easier for anybody in Salem, I think is fair to say. The election with the payroll tax was the first ballot that I submitted in Salem, and I voted no on the payroll tax. The reason I voted no is because the city needs more revenue, but to place the burden solely on working families seemed to me like it was punching down. I think it didn't place the obligation where it was obviously due, which was our state not paying the city for their impact on Salem. Despite voting no on that, I've come to strongly support the livability levy. And while I'm a person whose family's budget has seen better days, and like my neighbors, I still choose to delay some necessities to make things work, I will vote yes on this levy in May. The impact of a yes vote to me personally, based on my assessed value, is $14 a month for 5 years. And honestly, if I go into Target, I'll spend more than $14. So I think I can live. I think I can live. It's a temporary sacrifice that I think most of us can live with. As chair of the Marion County Democratic Party, I'm here to let you know that our Central Committee conducted an endorsement vote of our neighborhood representatives last Thursday, February 20th. I'm proud to announce that the Marion County Democratic Party unanimously endorses the Salem Livability Levy on this May's ballot. We're voting on the city we want to live in this May. This is not a partisan issue, but an issue of community priorities and our path forward. The Marion County Democrats invite everyone, the Marion County Republicans, to join us as neighbors in standing for Salem. We hope to agree that the real problem is that the state isn't fairly contributing to their use of Salem's utilities and emergency personnel, and that we can find agreement on this issue and see this levy pass. Thank you so much for putting it on the ballot.
Thank you for your testimony. Now we have Megan Harper online.
Hello, my name is Megan Harper. I live in Ward 4. And I've been really encouraged in the past few months about the council seeming to have unanimous support of putting a levy on the ballot to keep our very valuable community spaces available, which is more important than ever in a really divided time in our nation. Thank you all so much for that and for keeping this afloat. But please, please, please don't stop your work there. I'm going to be leveraging any personal influence I have with friends and neighbors. And you all have a much wider circle than I do. So please, please be vocal. Get community businesses and faith leaders and anyone that you can behind the cause with you. Mayor Hoy, you were so transparent in last year's mayoral debate and showed humility, saying that you did not need to be the expert in everything and that you had other people that you were open to listening to. And you did that, true to your word, with the Efficiency Committee. And it sounds as though they have found that there just isn't anything left to cut. And while I completely understand, appreciate wanting to account for good stewardship of our resources, I'm really scared about the doubt that cast on the city's support of this, and that the public perception is now that we have extra that we don't. And so I'm asking all of you on City Council to use the committee's report to build trust with the citizens of Salem. Mayor Hoy, my daughters and I will listen to a recording of the State of the City address next week after they get out of school for the day. We're just asking that you please use that address to foster some good faith in the levy. Saving the library could be your legacy. We appreciate everything that you have done so much so far. Thank you so much.
All right, that's it for public testimony. We are on to public hearings. Say again? The consent calendar.
Public comment on item 2, and then we go to item 3, which is the consent calendar.
Oh, I tried to skip the consent
Yeah, you
calendar. I
did.
apologize.
You did. We were just trying to get through this all.
Councilor Nishioka, please go
I
ahead.
move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. The consent calendar consists of minutes, 3.1A, the January 30th draft joint Marion County and City Council work session minutes, and 3.1B, the February 10th, 2025 draft City Council meeting minutes. Action items 3.3A, request to create a mid-year project for sanitary sewer rehabilitation on Center Street Northeast between Church Street Northeast and Capitol Street Northeast. And 3.3B, request to create a mid-year project for sanitary sewer rehabilitation in the vicinity of Waldo Avenue Southeast and Wildwind Drive Southeast. And that completes the consent calendar.
Thank you very much for that. Is there any discussion? Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to point out that under the first item, 3.3A, it states in the staff summary that during a routine inspection, staff discovered signs of structural failure. This is what government does. It sounds benign. It sounds boring. But this is what government does. A simple function of performing routine inspections has discovered that we need to draft a completely new brick sanitary sewer main, and the rehabilitation is urgent. Imagine if you arbitrarily cut government positions, what other things might unexpectedly arise. So weird. It's a good thing we don't run our city that way. Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments? Discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Thank you. And now we're on to public hearings.
The Salem City Council will now conduct a public hearing to receive testimony regarding Supplemental Budget 2 for unanticipated city expenses related to the airport fund. The hearing will begin with the staff presentation, followed by testimony from interested persons. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per person. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Kelly Blake-Schmidt, and I'm a management analyst in the Budget Office. I'm here this evening to present the public hearing for the Supplemental Budget 2 of the 2025 fiscal year. So Resolution 2025/5 would authorize an increase in both the revenues and expenditures for the airport fund in order to cover the expenses to be incurred by the airport for its minimum revenue guarantee agreement with Avelo Airlines. The supplemental budget would require over a 10% increase in expenditure for the fund, such triggering a public hearing as required by Oregon budget law. So I mentioned the minimum revenue guarantee. So as part of the agreement with Avelo Airlines, there is a minimum revenue guarantee, which ensures that the airline receives a minimum amount of revenue, even when other revenues such as sales are not sufficient. During budget development for the airport fund, staff did not anticipate needing expenditure authority to cover this minimum revenue guarantee. To offset this expense, a federal grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation and another grant from Travel Salem together will cover the additional $516,830 of authority needed for the rest of the fiscal year. Both revenue and expenditure authority are needed in the fund in order to make this action. So staff's recommendation is to adopt Resolution 2025/5 fiscal year supplemental budget 2, increasing resource and expenditure appropriation authority in the airport fund. And I am here as well as lovely Public Works staff to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Yes, Councillor Tigan.
Thank you. Earlier this evening, we heard a great report from the Housing Authority about the status of different federal funds in the form of grants coming into the city being of concern but solid. I'm curious if you could characterize our understanding of the Department of Transportation grants for this minimum revenue guaranteed. Is that money we already have? Is that money we need to apply for and receive? What's the status of it?
Yeah, so we also reached out to our partners at U.S. Department of Transportation, and this grant is still going through. So we have that in speaking with them, that guarantee.
So I guess I just want to make clear, we don't have the money, we need to apply.
We do a drawdown. Sorry, thank you. We do a drawdown, yeah. So as we need it, we draw down, we apply basically from the government and say, hey, we need this revenue, and then they provide it to us.
A follow-up?
Absolutely.
I guess, and I wasn't on council when we created or agreed to the minimum revenue guarantee. If, say, they decide not to move forward with it, are we under a legal obligation to pay it from another source?
I'm going to give that to Daniel Beatrice, City Attorney.
Thank you.
Hi, Dan Atchison. So the way the revenue guarantee would work is we would pull on the federal grant funds first. Travel Salem got commitments from local businesses to supplement that, and Travel Salem would be next in line to meet that guarantee. And then if all else fails, yes, the city would be responsible for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So if the city is responsible for it, how much money did we make last year from the airline? Do you recall?
I do not. I'm going to give that to Brian Martin.
And that's not a trick question. I mean, I'm curious to know because at the end of the day, we would have to pay for this, right, Mr. City Attorney? The $500,000?
Correct. So if the federal funds weren't adequate and Travel Salem funds weren't adequate, the city would be responsible.
So it would be great to know how much we did make from them.
Yep, Brian Martin, Public Works Director. I don't have that information with me, but we could certainly get that out to council
Okay, thank
the
you,
next
sir.
day or two.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Varney.
Thank you. I was just curious, more of a refresher. How is this minimum revenue guarantee calculated? And the reason I'm asking is because, Avelo had a bunch of flights and then they canceled, some of them. And I was wondering, is it on a sliding scale or how is it calculated? Anyone?
Yeah, Brian Martin, Public Works Director. So when the airlines were considering coming to Salem and Salem was looking into the grant availability, there was an established cost on what the minimum revenue should be for them to be profitable to both Las Vegas and to Burbank. And so the agreement we have in place with them stipulates, and I don't have the exact number, let's say it's $25,000. So if they don't generate $25,000 worth of revenue, any costs that are below it, this minimum revenue guarantee would cover so that they break even, I guess you could say. So those things were calculated before we signed the minimum revenue guarantee, and that's basically then how they look at each flight. So they run numbers for each flight that shows how many passengers, how much money they generated from revenue or from ticketing, how much money they generated from luggage, all the different things that go with the flight. And then they compare that to that minimum number, and if they're at it or above it, they don't charge us for anything. They met that minimum. If it falls below, then they send us a report each month saying, this is how much we fell below for this flight, this is how much we were above for this flight, and at the end of the month, we take those numbers and we either need to draw from that minimum revenue guarantee or we don't if they were in the black.
Okay. Thank you, because have we ever, I mean, has there been a situation where enough money has been made that we haven't had to pay anything?
Yeah, I believe so. There have been those cases.
Okay.
Not a lot of them, but there have been cases where months have been on the positive or in the black.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nishioka.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if it would be you, Kelly, or someone else. Maybe you could give us a review of the total amount of grant funds and the donations from Travel Salem. How much has already been paid for the minimum guarantee? And then kind of what balance we would be looking at that's left over, knowing that this would end in October of 2025, if I have my dates correct.
Yes, Brian Martin, Public Works Director again. As of today, they've asked for $489,000, $489,235 of the $1.2 million. So we are over halfway through it, but the request has been less than half. So far they're working more in the black than they are in the red.
So if I'm doing the math correct, then this 516 would be removed. That would leave us about 194. Is that correct? That would still be available until the end of, or until October when this ends?
So this action before you tonight is just to have the expenditure authority in anticipation of potentially needing it. So if for some reason, we approve the $516,830 and not all of that is needed this fiscal year, then that won't be drawn from. So it could be 200, it could be 100, maximum of the 516.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking that we were paying the 516. So thank you for that information.
Yes, Councillor Matthews.
And then I just want to make
clear. So I think the approximate revenue guarantee was about 1.2 million. Does that sound right? And the 500 and some we're doing tonight is not additional to this 1.2. It's just giving you authority to be able to pay out a portion of that 1.2, correct? And then on top of that, I know there was a question about how much the airline has made. I understand not having that data tonight, but I seem to remember we recently got a report from a consultant that was here on this floor, and I think they had at least a projection of how much income these airlines and Avelo has brought into the community as a whole. Do you guys happen to remember what that number was?
I believe the number was approximately $18 million brought into the local community. So not what we made, but what the community profited
Got it.
by.
Any other questions? Thank you, Kelly. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. Boom. Have anybody signed up? Councilor Nishioka, would you please make the motion?
Yes. I move to adopt resolution number 2025-5, fiscal year 2025 supplemental budget 2, increasing airport fund resource and expenditure appropriation authority for the minimum revenue guarantee.
Second.
Second by Tigan. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilor Nordyke.
I looked back through my notes from the November 25, 2024 meeting where we had a Salem Airport presentation. It said 19.3 million spent by new passengers, 22,600 new visitors, 74 visitors per day on average from Burbank and Vegas, and the bookings were very strong during the holidays. So I just want to provide, those are my own notes. Those aren't the official city notes, of course, but I thought that information might be helpful.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Councilor Tigan.
Yeah, just to clarify on my question during the public hearing, I think it's wise for us to take a moment in these times to consider every federal program that comes before us and consider it on behalf of the public. I think there's a lot of changes happening in our federal system day by day. It's dizzying, to say the least. Some people feel those effects very personally, and then we'll feel some as a community as well. And this is a great instance of, in the past, the City Council made a decision to support economic growth in our community that was underwritten by the federal government. And maybe we'll use all the money, maybe we won't need to use all the money, but that decision by the federal government to make the money available is really what underpins this growth. And if the federal government decides not to make the money available after they've said they would, it comes back to us as a community to fulfill essentially their commitment. And so I think I personally believe that the federal government should maintain its commitments and that it should underwrite this type of growth. But I also think we need to make it clear that if that sort of commitment went away, who would be asked to pay for it? That's not free money. It'd come back to this body and it'd come back to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Tigan.
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Matthews.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councilor Brown.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. To special orders of business, and I'm going to turn to the acting in charge City Manager Krishna Namburi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So tonight we are discussing the work of the City Efficiency Committee, and this committee was formed to examine how the city operates and identify any opportunities to improve efficiency in our services and as well as our expenditures. So I want to take a moment to thank all of the committee members who have given their time and expertise to this process. I would also like to recognize the members that are present tonight, and I see some of them. If you stand, then we do want to acknowledge you publicly for all the work that you have done. So to provide an overview of the findings, the committee's findings and recommendations, Brian Moore, who served as the chair for the Efficiency Committee, is here to give a presentation. Brian?
Thank you, Krishna. Name and address. Do I need to do that? Brian Moore, CEO and owner of Neighborly Ventures here in Salem. 2925 River Road South, Suite 100 in Salem, 97302. But I'm here tonight in my capacity as chair of the committee just mentioned. I really do intend to try to keep it as high level as possible, go where you want to go. If you've had a chance to review the letter that we submitted or will at some point. Actually, first I do want to say thank you. For the opportunity to participate in the process. I think to a person on the committee, it was extremely enlightening and really educational. And we are grateful for the dedication of resources and staff time to allow that to happen, and appreciate the time now to share our findings. Just as a reminder of the objectives that we were given, identify opportunities for cost efficiency in the general fund, improve understanding of city finances, and strengthen trust and transparency in fiscal practices of the city. The process we went through is we met 5 times over roughly a 2-week period. We engaged with city leadership, particularly department heads, including Chief of Police and Fire and Krishna on behalf of Enterprise Services, I think, and city management as well. To be clear, this was not a performance audit. This was a high-level review, and it was specific to the general fund, which as all of you well know, I don't suspect I'm going to probably say much that you don't know or that members of the Budget Committee know, but that fund is roughly $175 million of $750 million. So even just a better understanding of the different buckets involved in the city budget is extremely helpful. We generally, our findings consisted of 3 main principles. As was mentioned even earlier in some of the testimony, we do not find that there is inordinate waste found in the general fund operations of the city. But we do find there are opportunities for efficiency. They do exist. I think sometimes our report has been characterized as saying there's no opportunity for efficiency. I don't think that's true. Just not enough to cover $13.8 million. And not enough to cover the looming shortfalls that are coming if some powerful external, largely external factors aren't addressed, like the ones on the slide here between PERS and compensation and property tax, which I'll touch on lightly. And as also has been reported from our report, we found that Salem staff operate with fewer resources compared to peer cities. It demonstrated itself in fire, police, city manager's office, the library. The data is there. Highlighting just a few of those external forces that are really powerful in terms of their impact on the ability of the general fund to meet its obligations. Increasing PERS costs are really significant. As I noted in the letter, back in 2008, they were ranging between 8.6 to 12.2% of the budget. And now in 2026, it's ranging from 24 to 30%. It's a massive burden and hard to overcome. especially when 80%, as is the case in many organizations, but 80% of the general fund is allocated to salaries, benefits, and unfortunately, the challenge with that is that there's limited control by management in a significant part of that cost. When 80% of your budget is that, and you're not able to directly control the cost of it, that's challenging. It'd be challenging for any organization. And then, of course, the below average property tax revenue compared to peer cities. We called out in the letter that Salem is at 89 million, and our city, fellow city Eugene, is almost exact same population, is at 134. Even if you take into consideration the differing values of the properties, they're still at 108, which is significantly higher, and that's challenging. Super encouraged, as was already talked about, that we're starting to get real with the state in terms of their impacts and trying to address those in terms of how they contribute to our shortfalls. Then going to not all, but some highlighted recommendations that we had included in the letter. These are opportunities, to be clear, and they require some exploration. We can't say with certainty how big the efficiency would be, but we see the ones we highlighted are those that we felt like have the highest likelihood of finding efficiency with potentially some of the greatest impact. So there could be others for sure, but these are the ones we highlighted. Increasing intergovernmental collaboration, we gave some examples, but one that I know Chief Gerboth is looking at or may look at is the potential, for example, of combining fire stations with the county where they may be close and have some redundancy. We're not saying that's the case, we're just saying it's worth exploring as an example. Exploring alternative service delivery. I highlighted one that was particularly significant. 74% of the fire department's responses are to medical calls and not fire, including mental health emergencies. It feels like there may be alternatives to deliver that service that are lower cost. Reducing employee overtime and turnover. $9 million of the budget are going to overtime and turnover. We can't direct what that might all be caused by, but it's worth looking into as a way to achieve some savings. We recommended looking into artificial intelligence. Krishna shared some information about past efforts that have been made by the city. We recommend looking into that further. And then leveraging performance audits. And we use that term leverage intentionally. It's really easy for any organization to pay to have these audits performed, and then they can so easily be parked on the shelf. So we just really encourage looking closely at what is recommended. Doesn't mean that necessarily everything in it needs to be done, but making sure that there's some follow-up for some accountability on the ideas if people are going to dig in as they have. We are not pretending to tell you what to do next, but we do offer these suggestions. Consider prioritizing the efficiency measures that we've suggested, of course, and a couple of things. We mentioned in the letter the importance of collaborating with city staff and department heads for implementation. These are people who are in the trenches and likely will have some important insights into effective implementation of efficiency, not to mention the importance of having their buy-in on whatever is decided to be imposed as efficiency. And then lastly, we know that communication is difficult. But from our own experience learning in this process, we were so informed, we just wish every citizen had it. Now, we can't call every citizen in to do what we were fortunate enough to do, but if there are any efforts the city can make to efficiently and effectively communicate some of the things that we learned in this process, we think it could go a long way to achieve some of those other objectives that we had, particularly about transparency and education. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Dr. Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. So you suggested an increase in intergovernmental collaboration. Can you share with us what that look like, feel like, or sound like?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I would defer primarily to people like Chief Gerboth or Chief Womack or the library heads who would know better how to do that. We just received a lot of testimony, even from them, about some of their ideas about how that could happen. So admittedly, Councilor Brown, I can't say I have a lot of specifics about how exactly that would be achieved, but after listening to each of them, it felt like potentially some fertile soil where that could be achieved.
And I kind of knew you were going to say that, so I don't have a crystal ball, but I knew you were going to say that. Madam Mayor, can I ask another question?
Of course.
So I do want to go on record by saying you said there was like at least $9 million in employee overtime and turnover?
That's what was reported to us.
Got it. And that was from both the chiefs gave you that input, or those are the numbers that came from the AIC?
Those are numbers, I think, that came from the CFO.
Okay. I don't have a question, but I do want to go on record by saying, having had these conversations about the $9 million of overtime, there are going to be some people that hear that, and they're going to think, oh, people just got too much overtime. And I wanted to be clear that that is not what we're saying here. The last conversation I had, I believe with Chief Womack last year or 2 years ago, was that when it comes to overtime, especially those first responders, it is mandatory overtime. So rather than me define what that is, can one of the chiefs explain to the community what is mandatory overtime so everybody have a clear picture, so we don't want people thinking like, oh, we got folks that are out there just adding on the hours to work more. So could one of you please explain to the community what mandatory overtime is, please?
Thank you, sir, for the question. And I'll give an example with the fire department. We have what we call constant staffing. So we have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have 41 firefighters on duty, no matter the day. If we have a firefighter that's hurt, that gets sick, uses earned vacation time, then we have to fill that spot. Generally, that's with overtime. Right now, we have had extra personnel, floaters is what we call them. Right now, we have 15 members short of our organization, so we have to fill those vacancies. At the same time, our members have, with all workers, most workers in Oregon have protected leave. So we have Paid Leave Oregon, we have Family Medical Leave Act. Right now, we have 19 members on family medical leave. And so, for example, they have children. They get 12 weeks off to have it for a child. And so we have to fill those vacancies when they happen. And so some of those are unplanned. We can't plan for those 19 members that are off. If we were to hire extra members just for those possible eventualities, then our budget would be significantly higher just for normal pay and benefits. So the benefit that we have for overtime is that we only pay what we need at that particular time. However, I will say that too much overtime is a burden on our employees. And this morning, for example, I walked into Fire Station 1, where my office is. I saw a member who I know didn't work there, and I said, what are you doing today? And he says, I got mandatory overtime today. So we forced him to work on his days off. He was going to get off, but we needed to fill those 41 spots, and so he was required to work today.
Thank you for saying that. And Madam Mayor, the reason I wanted him to say that is just so the public will know. Because there is understanding, I would say it's a misunderstanding, that when you hear overtime, that there are some people that think, oh, they're just getting extra hours. And that's not the case. And Chief, I would also ask this. When you introduced the 4 members here who went to California to fight those fires, how did you replace those 4?
Yeah, 2. So their backfill was required with overtime. While they were deployed to California, they made overtime. So we see an overtime expenditure, but then it's 100% reimbursed for their deployment for mutual aid.
Thank you, sir. Madam Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Questions? Councillor Teigen?
Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank you and the other members of the committee to serve in this way. I appreciate that one of the findings that you had was wanting the city to communicate more about its status and its the challenges that it faces. And as a 6-year member of the Budget Committee and now a member of council, sometimes I feel like I'm, neck deep in it. And, but it's really, I think, telling that some of the brightest minds of our city when it comes to managing financial situations like this, even you folks would say, I actually learned quite a bit just by going to 5 meetings. I think that should be something of a call to us to do better when it comes to communicating. And one of the things that you say is talking about leveraging performance audits. And I think we do have an opportunity to leverage the recent city manager's performance audit to go after this need to communicate more. I wonder if you connected those two things during your conversation, the audit that came out and your sort of request for us to do more communicating.
Councilor Teigen, thank you. Yeah, we did. There's one of the specific recommendations in the performance audit is about communication, while also recognizing the lack of funds and personnel to do the communication. So it's a real challenge, and we don't take lightly the recommendation we made about communication. Like this is some simple thing, and if somebody would just communicate, this would be better. We don't take it that way. I know in my own organization that with my employees, there's constantly a call for better communication, and I'm constantly trying to figure out how to do it better. I think most organizations have that challenge. I think because of how informative this process was for us, we all felt like, man, the citizenry would really benefit from understanding this as much as we do now. And we don't even, I think if you talk to our committee members, we don't feel like we're experts on this by any means. But even in the time that we were given, it was a tremendous help to our understanding. And I'll just note in terms of the performance audit, it's hard to get past the first one in terms of findings that says city manager's office is woefully understaffed. And after I read that, no wonder everything after it is maybe not as efficient as it could be, because people are heavily involved, as it said, in tactics as opposed to strategies. And when we talk about the cost of turnover, I hope people won't read the report and say, oh, just $9 million of fat in turnover. That really wasn't our point, and that's why we talked about turnover as well, because it has a human cost. And when there's a human cost, efficiency suffers. So, Councilor Teigen, I'm not sure I've actually answered your question.
No, you really haven't. I appreciate your perspective on it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moore, I too want to thank you and the committee for all the work that you did and having the ability to go, aha, and recognize what I believe us counselors have been trying to share. And it is very difficult to communicate with people that still feel like I'm not providing accurate information. I'm providing a one side. I hope that you and the members of your committee will take it upon yourselves to spread the word in the sense of saying, we saw this, we recognize it, because that alone, and you being here tonight, makes a huge difference for us in having people understand. So again, I thank you for all of that work. I thank our finance staff for providing you and all of the other staff that came to do this. And please take every opportunity you and the other members can to share that information. I would sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Nishioka.
Yes, Councillor Nordyke and then Christian Ombury.
Thank you. I echo the comments made by my colleagues already, so ditto to all of that. I really, again, want to thank you, and yes, please help us and be ambassadors for the kinds of things that you've observed. I think that is of the utmost importance. I appreciate that you've described much of our challenges as externalities, because that is true, not just for the city of Salem, but for every city in Oregon. Those PERS rates are statewide. Those property tax caps are statewide. And we compete with other fire departments for firefighters and other police departments for police officers and so on. These are highly competitive positions. And anyone who has gone through all of that trouble and training and licensure can go wherever they want. And then you, as a city, have to decide, how do you balance making yourself competitive and holding the line on your bottom line every year? So I really appreciate the fact that you've highlighted these three things: compensation and benefits, property tax revenue limits, and PERS. Because when we talk to other city councilors and mayors, because I do, it doesn't matter if it's an urban or a rural city. It doesn't matter if it's a city run by Democrats or Republicans. It doesn't matter. All of us are facing these same challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councillor Nordyke. Anyone else? Councillor Varney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Moore, for doing this. You and the whole team. I watched all of the meetings because I was really curious as to how the information was going to be presented in that short a period of time. And I was really, it was great to hear the questions all of the team members had in trying to understand that information and then pulling it together. It was a really good learning experience, and I'm hoping we can use that to help with messaging. I was kind of curious, as you've been out in the community since writing your final report, I just was wondering, have you gotten some feedback from the community?
Councilor Varney, no, not really.
Okay, thank you.
Not much. I mean, I read about some of our work in articles and comments, but I personally haven't received any direct feedback about our findings as much as I've read feedback from others, so that's the short answer to your question. Sure. It was a very interesting process, and I probably have a little more sympathy for each of you, trying to navigate. I didn't know any of the. Well, I knew one of the other members of the committee when we started, and I really knew not a lot about the process that had gone in. And I learned kind of after the fact, because of some public comment that we got, that there was a lot of feelings about it. I feel, I can't speak for every member of the committee, but from my observations from serving on the committee, I really felt like none of us came with a particular agenda. It was, I got a request to participate in a meeting or set of meetings to look at possible efficiencies. And I was joking with Brian Johnson, another committee member tonight, that at the beginning of our first day, we asked ourselves, okay, so what does success look like when we're done with this 2 weeks? And naively, I would say, we were like, well, I guess we're going to try to find $13.8 million. And Josh kind of chuckled at us, and clearly we didn't. We hope that nevertheless our exploring, asking as many hard questions as we could ask in the time that we had, we hope it meets the needs of this council in what it was seeking to do, whatever those purposes may be. while also representing and honoring our citizenry. That was our goal. And I, like I said, I can't speak to the hearts and minds of every individual on the committee, but I felt pretty sincerely that's what they were seeking to do.
Okay. Okay. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for, when I think about it, all the hours that you and the rest of the committee had to put in, because it's not just the hours at the meeting.
No, it's not. I can
I'm
attest
sure
to
you
that.
had plenty of materials. I mean, probably 100 hours of volunteering your time. So thank you so much for doing that.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So, not a question. Well, it's a question, but it's also a suggestion.
Okay.
So, for those of us in this space, and including the CFO, we knew that, right? We knew that we weren't going to find the 13.8 million. We also knew that when you look in the city manager's office, we also know that they're doing multiple jobs. Can I say it one more time? They do a lot of work. And without their leadership, just so the community knows, if we were to lose anyone in the city manager's office, it would be horrible. It would be absolutely horrible, because they carry a lot of the weight of the city on their shoulders. A. B, to the Chamber of Commerce, right? Because I believe it was CEO Hofford who came with this idea, correct?
I actually don't know.
Whose idea was this? Madam Mayor, I'm gonna blame it on Tom, so we'll say it's his idea. But he was an ally in support of this. So one of my suggestions, or just a thought, would be, can we go back to the Chamber of Commerce and ask, hey, we need help on sharing this story with the city? Because at the same time, we have the Library Foundation, they're coughing up a lot of money, and I'm not suggesting that the Chamber of Commerce should cough up money, but I am throwing it out there. Because the message needs to get out there. It needs to get out there from all 8 corners to make sure that people understand that we do need their support. If they vote no, vote no. If they vote yes, thank you. But it would be good for us to go back to the chamber and say, hey, how much are you going to support? How willingly and how much can you support us in getting the word out? I think that's a vital question to ask back to the chamber. Thank you again, though.
Yeah, again, our pleasure.
Anyone else? Well, I would like to say that I am filled with gratitude in this moment for the efforts that you all have put forward on this committee, this very important moment. It's sort of a part of the picture for me. When last spring I made a motion for quarterly reporting on the budget rather than a one-time drop, that was a start. When I pushed for a forecast review so we could kind of see maybe a different look, that happened, and we went from 17.8 to 13.8 million. Along with other efforts, having this committee meet, the piece I left out is that when I decided to run for council, I had a lot of comment from the public about how the city's doing it wrong, about there's something really wrong. There can't be this kind of deficit. And I wanted answers for that. And the only way to really get it is to have the people who seem to know which questions to ask come in and have a look. And to me, that's what happened in this moment. And I really couldn't be more grateful for that. And I do know that you all on the committee have the ability to communicate with a wide audience, and that you can help folks to understand the picture of the budget, even just the general fund, in the city of Salem, so that we can stop casting doubt on what's going on behind the curtain and start to move forward effectively and for the right reasons. So thank you so much for your time, each of you. I really couldn't appreciate it more. And I know Acting in Charge Numbry has comments. Yeah, I'll make it quick. So to Brian, going back to the committee's suggestion to follow up on recommendations and not pause, I just kind of wanted to take a minute to mention the leadership team and I have already started talking about how to implement some of the recommendations that the committee has suggested. It is a challenging process. I know you mentioned about like inefficiency sometimes is related to the resource constraints, right? It is a challenging process, but we will continue to work on it. But I just kind of want to thank you and the committee members for the work that you have done, and there's more to follow up on that, so thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Anything further? Okay, it's been suggested, and I agree, that before we move into the levy, we have a 5-minute break. Okay, so we'll come back. Okay, if we could come back together, that'd be great. Who are we missing? Councilor Varney? All right, if we could get everybody back together. This meeting is back to order, and we are on to item 5B. Go ahead, acting in charge city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At our February 10th meeting, the City Council directed staff to prepare the necessary materials to refer the proposed livability levy to the May 2025 ballot. So this evening, those materials are ready for your consideration. The proposed levy is designed to fund important community services programs, including parks operations, restored and continued hours for the library, recreation programs, and Center 50+. So our Chief Financial Officer, Josh Eggleston, will provide a brief overview of the levy. Following that, the City Attorney, Dan Atchison, will walk you through the ballot title and statement for your review and consideration. So with that, I'll turn it over to Josh.
Thank you very much. Again, Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. You've seen all the information I'm going to show you, so we're just going to walk through it fairly quickly. What is a local option levy? Voter approval is required. That's why we're here this evening. It's a temporary property tax lasting up to 5 years, used to fund specific services, and it's available to all government entities. For this specific scenario, 98 cents. For the library, it maintains the current staffing of 37.5 FTE and restores some service hours with an additional 3 FTE. So an additional 20 total hours, 10 additional hours at the main library branch, and 10 additional hours at the West Salem branch for a total of 68 library hours. Also maintaining the current staffing at the parks maintenance, parks operations, 45 FTE, recreation services, 5 FTE, and Center 50+, 9 FTE. And I do apologize, it's full-time equivalent positions when I say FTE. This revenue from the proposed fund would go into a separate individual fund. So this is a kind of a snapshot of what that fund could look like with that zero beginning fund balance. The total estimated levy revenue ranging from 14 to 16.6 million over the 5 years. The current service cost, the net service cost from after revenue and savings for Center 50+, the current service of the library, library restoration, those 3 FTEs highlighted there, parks maintenance and parks recreation. For the total estimated program cost, the change to fund balance, and then the ending fund balance. As you might see, in the first couple of years of the levy, it actually funds more than the cost of the services, but that's offset by the last 2 years of the forecast by it funding less. So overall, you end at $75,000 for the 5 years, and we are talking about millions of dollars, so $75,000 isn't a big margin of error, but it is expected to fund the services. The financial impact, a local option levy would shift these costs from the general fund to levy funds. The thing that I have to say is the levy does not fully eliminate the general fund deficit. On this chart, you can see we get pretty close there in the first year, so fiscal year 2026, with a fiscal year impact or use of fund balance of about $100,000, but it escalates in the out years. But it does make that deficit much more manageable, and it does protect other city services. So the idea of the levy is you take $14 million of services along with the revenue, put them in a separate fund, you're able to manage that deficit more easily within the general fund. 2 accountability measures are included as a separate fund, as I mentioned, and then a specific audit. We're also planning to have an oversight committee that's included in the ballot language. So in the presentation, we have the ballot caption. I don't know, Dan, do you want me to walk through these, or do you want to take over?
I'll be happy to walk through them, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. First, I just wanted to remind council what you're actually doing tonight. You're adopting a resolution that will refer this measure to the voters in May, and then directing the city attorney to actually draft the ballot title. So we've got a draft ballot title here for your consideration. We brought this up on the 10th and got your feedback on that and incorporated some changes. Since that meeting, we've undergone some additional changes. Those changes came out to you with the additions agenda tonight. There's actually one more change we're going to need to make to the resolution that I've spoken to the council president about, to add and delete a word in the actual question of the ballot title, but I'll go ahead and walk through these briefly. So the caption is what folks see when they look at their ballots. The very first thing is limited to 10 words, so you try to be as comprehensive as possible and get the point across of what the subject is. And so this is very similar to what you saw before. In working through that, we did change it a little bit from what you saw on the 10th. The idea was to bring up the point in the caption that parks, recreation, libraries, and senior services are included in what this levy is going to cover, as opposed to just sort of a ambiguous term, community services or livability, which didn't have a real distinct meaning. So the question, we rejiggered that a little bit to put it in more of a question format. We also tried to move up the Parks, Recreation, Library, and Center 50 Plus services into the beginning of the question, so it's more apparent to folks what they're looking at. This question, as it appears here, is what was sent out to you in the addition. The change that we're looking for in the resolution, because this is the actual measure or the question that you're going to be adopting as part of the resolution. The change here is where you see the word 50 plus. We're adding the word services and deleting the word and. So you don't see the word and there, it's already been deleted here, but the way this used to read was shall Salem maintain parks, recreation, library, and center 50 plus with a 5-year levy, et cetera. So because we're only limited to 20 words, we need to be careful about what we add and delete. So we're getting rid of the word and that came between library and center 50 plus and adding services after center 50 plus. So it helps a little bit with readability and better explains what's happening. The sentence at the bottom there, that's statutorily required. That'll appear and isn't counted towards the 20-word limit. So I know folks probably can't read that. You do have a copy in front of you. We did make some changes to that based on the version that was that you saw on the 10th. The second paragraph there, the sentence has been added. Additional reductions may be necessary without additional revenue. So as Mr. Eggleston referred to, this doesn't completely solve the budget deficit and tries to inform folks that if this doesn't pass, additional reductions would be necessary. Other than that, the summary, it's limited to 175 words, so we have to be careful and deliberate in what words we choose. Looking at the sentence below that, what I just spoke to, funds from the levy would restore and maintain, and then just a bullet point of the services. We tried to use some more active language as opposed to programming. We chose programs. We cut off the word public from library, so now it's going to say library operations programs. While public obviously is accurate, we can, I think most folks understand that when we refer to the library, it's the public library. Just looking at and making sure the version that you've got is the version we're looking at. The very last sentence there on that page where it talks about, the second to last sentence, I should say, the cost of this levy is estimated at $220 per year for a typical home, with an assessed value, not market value, because folks often get that confused. They may think of their home being worth more than what the assessed value is. That's accurate, but your taxes are based on the assessed, not market value. And then we added the sentence at the bottom there regarding the oversight committee. Yeah, that was brought out, that was discussed at the council meeting on the 10th. And then if you go to the next page, if you've got that. Oh, okay, so there's language there that wasn't included. There, if you look at your packets, there is a final paragraph that says by fiscal year, this levy is estimated to raise the following amounts. And then it's got figures for each fiscal year for the next 5 years, starting in 25-26. Josh referred to those earlier. So we're looking at approximately 14 million for this next fiscal year, ending in approximately 16.6 million in fiscal year 29-30. That language is also required, and it's not included in the word total for that. So the explanatory statement, this is essentially council's statement to voters. It appears alongside the ballot title. It's pretty consistent with what you had seen before. We did rephrase a few things and add a few sentences. The third paragraph there where it says those reductions have reduced but not eliminated the city's funding gap, that has been added to the statement. And then the sentence at the end of that paragraph, without additional revenue, all city services may continue to be reduced due to budget constraints. That sentence actually used to appear later in the ballot title. I want to thank Councilor Nordyke for providing some suggested feedback on that. We moved it up closer to the top, so folks will read it earlier if they read the explanatory statement. There's a few other minor changes referring to the Revenue Task Force is made up of community members, just to make sure folks know that. And there's been just a sort of organization to make the points more clearly regarding what services that the levy will pay for. I think it's important for folks to know that what services are going to be paid for and that the levy is restricted to just those services. That is the explanatory statement. At this point, if council adopts the resolution that'll direct the city attorney's office to draft the ballot title, it'll be pretty much as we discussed tonight. It's not due to the county until March 20th. So this meeting is basically your last opportunity to pass this resolution, but there's also a 5-day period for the city attorney to draft the ballot title, then there's a 10-day appeal period. So we backed up from March 20th to provide a sufficient time for that to occur. If an appeal of the ballot title or explanatory statement is filed, it would go to the Salem Municipal Court. And those conclusion of my remarks. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews, did you have a question?
I was just going to ask, so probably should have brought this up before, I just didn't catch it, but in the section of the summary, it says the cost of this levy is estimated at $220 per year for a typical home with an assessed value with an assessed not market value of $224,000. Would it be possible to just end the sentence at the cost of this levy is estimated at $220 per year for a typical home? I mention that because I'm not sure that everybody understands, kind of to your point of why you have the not market here, the difference in them and the difference in the value on their actual tax statement between the two. And so most people, I'm concerned, are going to see 224 and they're going to think, well, I bought my house for more than 224,000, so I'm going to be paying more than the average, not understanding the difference.
It's certainly possible. That type of language is pretty common regardless of the type of measure, whether it's a bond measure or a levy. I agree with you. There's going to be some confusion, people thinking that their market value is the same as their assessed value. I don't know. I don't think I would recommend deleting that language, given that in the summary part of the ballot title, we're limited to 175 words, so there's not a lot more context we can provide there. We could add additional language in the explanatory statement. We have extra words to spend, so to speak. So we could provide a little bit more, explanation to folks of what assessed value means in relation to the levy.
Any other questions? Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Mr. City Attorney, on the ballot caption, 10 words, that looks like it's 11.
I think the dash is doing some work.
Oh.
Correct.
The dash is the work?
Correct. So we have verified with the Marion County Elections folks that the 5- year would be considered one word.
Okay, got it. Good to know.
We thought of putting a dash between every word, but we thought that might.
Any other questions? Seeing none.
Ask Council President to make a motion.
Okay. Councillor Nishioka, would you please make the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 2025-6, referring a 5-year Community Services and Livability local option levy to Salem voters, and approve the explanatory statement and modify the question in section 1 of the resolution to match the question in the draft ballot title provided to the council as an addition earlier this evening.
Second.
I'm going to give that to Tigan. A second. Any further discussion?
I have some points of discussion. I think that probably what I'm going to say is we pretty much already talked about, but I'll go ahead. Staff provided council with modified draft ballot, including a modified question through an addition in the agenda, which the council approved earlier. The question part of the ballot is approved by council through resolution 2025-6. However, the changes to the draft ballot title were not carried over to the question as it appears in section 1 of the resolution. The modification will remove the word "and" before the words "Center 50+" and add the word "services" after the words "Center 50+" in the question as it appears in section 1.
Thank you for that. Great job, Linda. Anyone, anything further? Councillor Tigan?
Sure. I'll start us off because I believe the vote on this is really to send this to the public as our next step. First, I really want to thank the city staff for all your work getting this ballot title ready on the schedule that we have in order to make the May ballot. I know a lot of work has gone in on behalf of the city staff and really want to just signal our appreciation. This vote that we're taking tonight is, one of the reasons I wanted to do this job and step up into this service was to help plug this hole. And it's been quite an adventure, I think, for a couple of city councils and our public. And I just really want to acknowledge the public's role that we heard this tonight. We as a council could move this to the public tonight, and it becomes their job to decide whether or not this is how we move forward. I welcome people's challenge to us as counselors to help advocate for it. I guess I'd say tonight, from my 6 years on Budget Committee and now my 6 weeks on City Council, I just really want to assure the public that this ballot title isn't a Cadillac. As one of my colleagues used to say, it's a Subaru. And if you want to buy American, it's a Chevy. And we're not going out and buying a new one. This is a replacement of a timing belt and maybe doing the water pump while they've got the engine open. This is really just to maintain these services, to put the library, Center 50 Plus, and parks in their own fund in order to keep them going for the next 5 years. And to Josh's point, we're not out of the woods yet. But I think it's really important. I've heard specifically from members of public that they really don't like us threatening the things they love in order to get their buy-in on the budget. And I think this takes something that we've heard for the last few months on this council that people really want to see move forward, and we give the public a way to do it. I really want to signal my appreciation to the former city council for prepping this council to take this on in the short amount of time that we have. And I very much look forward to voting yes.
Thank you, Councillor Teigen. Councillor Matthews.
You know, I wanted to just kind of speak to the coalition that's kind of come up and really taking this under their wing to be able to move this forward for all three of these entities, parks, Center 50 Plus, library, and just kind of how them coming together has really sort of motivated this entire thing forward. But you know, and I can only speak for myself, but one of the biggest impacts for me on this entire thing is the library board coming forward and covering the city's costs for this, where the city is not going to incur costs for this actual ballot measure. And so for me, that was one of the things that personally spoke a lot and got me on board with a positive vote on this. And so, yeah, I think if the city were having actual expenses here, that would be a much harder vote. But for knowing that they're actually willing to step up and cover that, this makes it a really easy vote for me tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Nordyke, did I see your hand? You did. Would you like to speak?
I would. Thank you. I think my remarks at the start of this year were intended to help lay the foundation for tonight. Of course, I'm voting yes. Spoiler alert. I started out by saying the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor, and that's why you have to resort to a levy to ensure real things for real people. Rent has been outpacing incomes for quite some time. And when you look at what this library is funding, it's about ensuring that folks do not have to pay to have decent human things in their lives. And I'll give you some examples. A library. Wealthy folks can afford private versions of everything on this list. A library. If you have enough money, you can go to a private bookstore, you can pay for an overpriced latte, and you can sit there and read in peace a book that's $20 or more, brand new. By the way, and the library is a lot more than books, I might add. It's also a safe third space, which again, a lot of people in this city cannot afford. It is one of the few places you can go that is safe and dry and indoors, that has anti-discrimination rules, that ensures that inclusivity is enforced and available to everybody. And you are not required to show ID when you walk in. You're not required to show citizenship when you walk in. You are allowed to walk in and to breathe the air. and to take advantage of the tens of thousands of print materials, the enormous DVD and audiobook collection, the computer terminals for you to conduct research or job searching. And I'm still just talking about the library. If you have enough money, you can afford a privatized version of every single one of those services. What about parks? The privatized version of a park would be, number one, a gigantic backyard where you pay for someone else to maintain it, do all the landscaping, maybe a private pool, all those things. How about a country club? How many people in Salem can afford those things? Our parks are an essential resource, all 94 of them, including Minto Brown Island Park, which is larger than Central Park in New York City. If we didn't have those things, where would people go who cannot afford the privatized versions of parks? Next, recreation services. Having free sports and movies in the park is essential for folks who cannot afford to take a family of four to a movie theater to watch the latest showing. How many families can afford to go to a ticketed sporting event? The list goes on and on. For those who can afford privatized versions of these things, there must be a powerful temptation to vote no. But I am urging people to appeal to their better angels, and I urge you to remember it shouldn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you, and that includes economic circumstances that are often beyond our control. And last but not least, Center 50 Plus. Country clubs, once again. Some people can afford to be members of private clubs, and private clubs are held several times a week throughout the city, where you have to be a paying dues member to be a part of it, and then you have to pay a venue to be there, and then you need to pay extra if you want to have a lunch during it. Those are privatized versions of Center 50 Plus, where anyone, any senior, anyone can walk in and pay next to nothing to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So when I started off my council year this year and I talked about the fact that the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer and rents are outpacing incomes, it was with this levy in mind. And part of me feels a little indignant that we must fight for scraps. We must go to the public and hope and pray that they will see the benefit to this, that they will recognize that this is worth it. And by the way, this gives us 5 years of peace for our city staff who constantly feel the pressure of what would happen if job cuts came. And the relief this would provide to our city staff who have to operate under the threat of having to make $13.8 million in cuts. For 5 years, we would have a reprieve from that. And in those 5 years, we would have time to show audits to demonstrate we are spending the money as we said we would. And I can guarantee you we will, because look at all of our other financial audits. We've had clean audits every year since I've been on Budget Committee, and probably many years before that. But I've been on Budget Committee since 2017. We have an exceptional financial track record. And if you don't believe me or the independent auditors, then believe the Efficiencies Committee, if nothing else. This levy is an imperative, because at a time when people are struggling and more people in our community are struggling, this has never been more essential than it is now.
Thank you, Councilor Nordyke. Any other comments? Yes, Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I appreciated when the Revenue Task Force reviewed all the options that they felt they could bring to us, to the council, to the Budget Committee, for ways of helping the general fund. And of course, one of their recommendations was a levy. Our choices were public safety levy or a livability levy. What I believe none of us wanted to do is put public safety on a 5-year period of a levy. And then where do you go from there? I feel that also their budget is so much larger that how do you even start to fund that? So it became very clear for me that a livability levy was going to be the smartest levy option to bring to the voters. And of course, for the services that they deserve, and I know that they are advocating for. And so it will be up to the voters for us to continue these services. And though it will not completely close the gap, it will make such a huge difference so that we can maintain other services. And I feel that a levy is something that people understand, and the language that our city attorney has provided us with tonight is a clear indication of what they will get for that tax and for a 5-year period of time. So it's important for them to know that that money is protected and it will be there for those services that they are voting for. We will be leaving it up to our voters, but I know that all of my fellow councilors will be advocating for this, and we will be working hard. But we are going to rely on all of our community that's coming forward, and that is expanding. The number of groups that are coming forward has increased, and that gives me true hope that people understand and will be voting positively for this, and as I will be tonight. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Barney?
Thank you very much. Well, my colleagues have said it all very, very well. All the benefits we get in our community from Center 50 Plus, the library, and our parks. I wanted to mention at the last Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, we received a presentation on the recreational programs that our parks provide, and also the softball programs. I mean, I didn't realize that last year we had 3,820 league players in softball. You know, and 25 tournaments came in here. I mean, when you think about the revenue that generates in our city with teams coming in and people playing, it makes a huge difference, and we need to support these. The other thing is a lot of the fields, like our soccer fields, baseball fields, others get rented out, and there's a little revenue that comes in from that. But again, all those facilities bring in people from outside, and they get a chance to enjoy our parks and spend time with families and friends, and the benefits are just immense. And so I'm supporting this, obviously, for multiple reasons, but you know, I had to put in a plug for parks because, wow, they do so much for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments? Yes, Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I was waiting to see if Councilor Green wanted to go before me. We saved the best for last, right? I think they've already said everything that needs to be said, and I'm in support of this levy. But I do want to take just a moment to recognize that there are some people that are struggling financially. And although I may not be one of those, and I live in Ward 5 and Center 50 Plus is there, I do think there's an opportunity for us to take a close look at those individuals who are struggling, because if it passes, great. And on that side of it, I think we have more work to do. Like even, I think President Nishok has said this before, this is just a vote, the work still continues. And so for those individuals who are struggling financially, I think we'll have to find a way to make sure that their voices are heard also. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Gwynn.
So, of course, I'm in support of the levy, and I will be voting yes. I want to thank the combined coalition, Parks, Library, Center 50 Plus, but it's going to take all of us to get this levy to pass. This is just the first step. As I look around at my fellow counselors too, most of us are working full time. So as much as we want and need to advocate for the levy. Now, I just want to remind folks that we all too are working full-time jobs, and we have, but again, I guess what everyone else has said, I absolutely agree with, but it's going to take all of us as a community to get this passed. It's not just the coalition, and it's not just us as counselors and mayor. It's going to take all of us as a community to work together to get this passed.
Anyone else? Well, I will say that I agree with everything all of you have said, and that I am looking forward to this bit of a sprint to May. We've got a lot to do in a little short amount of time, but I have been so incredibly inspired by the coalition that has gotten behind this. It feels so community-driven to me, and I think that that's something that's been missing. So I'm really looking forward to it, and looking forward also to encouraging my circle of friends to do the same and support this levy. It will bring relief to the general fund, and I love the accountability factor that it's in a separate fund, that we can keep an eye on it and know that it's doing exactly what it was intended to do, and also that it will be audited specifically. So I think the work that the incredibly qualified city staff has put into this in a relatively short amount of time is impressive, to say the least. And I'm excited to see the outcome in May. I have, as Councilor Nishioka said, I have great hope. So thank you, everyone. And is there anything further? All right. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. And the motion passes. I would only, may I comment? Is this legal? No? I just want to say that, again, this is one of those pieces, building trust in the community, with the community, and I'm hopeful for a good outcome. So thank you so much to everyone. All right, we now move on to item 5C, and the Brian Martin, I believe, are you reporting on this one?
I will go ahead and introduce ODOT and their consultants from OBEC Engineering here, actually Dowell Engineering. They'll be making a presentation on the seismic retrofit of the Center Street Bridge. While they gear up their presentation, I would just point out that seismic resiliency getting across the river is really important. And we're excited that ODOT is proceeding with this project. But make no mistake, this is a very difficult project to complete. And it's very expensive, and there will be impacts. So this is really to provide information at this time. There's going to be a bunch of public outreach that's going to begin shortly after this meeting. And it looks like they're ready to go. So I will turn it over to Anna Henson with ODOT.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mayor Hoy and Council. Well, Brian kind of gave our presentation, but we'll get into a few more details. My name's Anna Henson. I'm the ODOT Area Manager. Excuse me. And I have our design consultants here to get into kind of the grit of give you all a project overview of our Center Street Bridge seismic retrofit project. First, though, I would like to just thank the city. Our partnership with you on this project has is really in the last, I don't know, Bob says 18 months. I think that's how long it's been that we've been coordinating with city staff. They've been amazing. So we've had a lot of challenges, and we're working through those. There's maybe some more to come, but I just want to express our appreciation for that partnership. It's been wonderful, so thank you. Okay, with that, I'm handing it over to Bob Goodrich.
Thanks, Anna. Good evening, everyone. Bob Goodrich, I work with Dowell, the consulting firm that ODOT selected to design the Center Street project, and so I'm the project manager for that team. And I think the 18 months is probably rounding down. I didn't want to be too generous, but we've been working with the city for a long time to bring the project to fruition here, and we really appreciate that. So jumping in, just kind of context for tonight, there's no decisions we're requesting of council. This is just a briefing, informational. We'll give an overview of the project scope, project outcomes, why we're doing the project, overview of the scope, the schedule for the project. Then Jared will talk to you a little bit about the impacts, the mitigation that we've worked with, the city to offset those impacts, give a little bit of an update on the public outreach that Brian alluded to, and then present kind of next steps of where the project is going from here. And then after that, we'll be glad to field any questions council may have. So in terms of why are we doing the project, what are the anticipated outcomes? Big picture is to create a seismically resilient crossing from West Salem into downtown. Both Marion Street and Center Street are vulnerable to the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. Center Street's a little bit newer bridge, and so ODOT has identified that as the bridge to retrofit to maintain that connectivity post-earthquake. As the project came to be, the city saw an opportunity to upgrade the water line that's on the bridge that crosses the river, both upgrade the size of the line, but also to make it seismically resilient to improve the utility resiliency for seismic as well. On the east side, there's a number of footing conflicts and we'll get into that a little bit, but the city water line has a lot of conflicts on the east side, and so the city's taking that opportunity to upgrade, kind of pair with the work on the bridge itself and upgrade the water line from Water Street to Front Street. Because, and I'll get into this on the next slide, the project, it got more expensive. Brian gave that away. So the project is now broken into two phases. We'll be presenting mostly on phase one tonight. That's not going to retrofit the entire bridge. The west approaches will remain unretrofitted. And so as part of this first phase, we're going to develop an emergency response plan. Should an earthquake occur from after phase one is complete, before phase two is complete, ODOT will have a plan in place to restore that west side connection more quickly. And then lastly, we're going to do some initial alternative studies on the west approach replacements as part of this first phase to really set the table for phase two to better understand what the impacts are, what the costs are, and how to move forward with that as ODOT identifies funding. So I mentioned, you can see in orange here, that's the phase one project that we're moving forward with now for full design, permitting, right-of-way, and construction. And then the future phase two is replacing part or all of the west approaches to create that full seismically resilient connection. So there's going to be a series of animations here that pop up. So starting on the west side, that circle, that's the pier right on the riverbank on the west. We're going to replace that pier entirely, and we're going to replace it in a way that sets it up to support the eventual replacement of the west approaches. So kind of looking forward to that. Let's see, all the piers in the river are, large concrete footings. And so we're going to expand those footings, add additional foundation elements, steel piles and ground anchors to provide the support we need. And as you can imagine that, there's a lot of in-water work that goes along with that, a lot of cofferdams, and Jared will get into that. On the east side, if you're familiar with, Front Street and Riverfront Park, there's a lot of bridge piers all over the place. We need to retrofit nearly every one of them. Mostly by enlarging the footings and installing some anchors to hold the footings in place during the earthquake. Those are really hard to see, but there's a blue circle and a blue rectangle that just popped up there. So I mentioned the city underground utilities that are in conflict with some of the footing construction. So those are the general areas where we'll be upgrading or replacing, relocating city water line to get it out of the way of the bridge construction. And then a really hard to see dashed blue line across the river. That's the upgraded portion that the city has decided to include with the project and increase the resiliency of the water system for West Salem. And then the really hard to see black box there on the left side of the image is the phase 2 project that we'll be looking at in a little more detail to, like I said, set the stage for full final design and construction once funding is identified, and to help ODOT confirm, what that cost is going to be. So quickly on, this big picture project schedule. We're on a pretty aggressive timeline. You can see, design will continue to design through the rest of this year. The permitting process, our big milestone, is NEPA, which is a federal National Environmental Policy Act that we have to comply with. So that's really the push right now, is to get all of our documentation in place so the environmental phase wraps up and we can start the right-of-way acquisition phase. Hopefully, we're hoping by May. We have a number of railroad approvals. Some of the bridge footings are right adjacent to the railroad tracks. We're not going to impact the railroad tracks, but we're within their right-of-way, if you will. And so we need a series of approvals from them. Ultimately, all this leads to, in January of next year, we're going to go to bid for the project, select a contractor, and by the end of March or early April, we expect contractor to be selected and mobilizing to the site. And so with that, I'll let Jared take over.
Thanks. Jared Trowbridge, and I'm helping Bob manage our consultant team on the project. Center Street Bridge obviously carries a lot of traffic through Salem and goes across 2 city parks, so I'm going to walk through some of the impacts. So those white rectangles there represent the approximate limits of the work platforms that we anticipate to be in the river over multiple seasons. So those will be permitted. We're working with the Coast Guard to have navigable channels for both river users and other larger boats to come through. And then those circles, we've been working a lot with city staff on park impacts, kind of durations, footprint, what can be done to mitigate those through construction. We'll talk a little bit about that. Just kind of going high level and can dig in if there's any questions. There will be some nighttime full closures required. I think we're estimating kind of 2 to 4 nighttime full closures during construction, and then extended lane closures where 2 lanes of traffic will be closed for consecutive weeks. And then similar for both the water line and retrofit work, there will be Front Street lane closures, and then I think a couple weeks of the Marion Street on-ramp closure to complete the seismic retrofit work. There's a few of the bridge supports that are right adjacent to those and just need room to get that work done. So Bob mentioned we've been working probably at least 18 months discussing project impacts and mitigation strategies with city staff. Multiple meetings to discuss that. We've incorporated a lot of city feedback to kind of refine that staging area and work area that we're having for the contractor. Big piece of that has been tree compensation and replanting, making sure we're working to get the parks back to where we all want to see them. Providing additional temporary parking. Some of the staging area will be in the riverfront north parking lot, and so ODOT has committed to replacing 10% more parking spaces nearby. And then accommodating large riverfront park events. Ironman is, I think, the key one that's been big the last few years, but having additional support for park staff during those events. And then ongoing public outreach, which I'll talk about more here. So ODOT has another consultant on board to help with a comprehensive strategy for public outreach. We've been working with city staff to make sure we have the right interested parties list as we begin that work. There will be community in-person, phone, and email canvassing, and then small group briefing and presentations. We're already identifying some large community events and want to get to some high volume locations on both sides of the river. And then online open house late 2025 and early 2026 prior to construction as well. And then the transportation options campaign, Bridge the Commute, which with alternative transportation modes is also going to help spread the word for the project impacts. So coming up later this week, we're going to do a 3-day in-person canvassing near the parks, kind of starting at the parks and working our way outwards to businesses. And then there will be follow-up outreach with bilingual project flyers. We want to do one tabling event in the near future on each side of the river just to get more awareness out there. Beginning with the canvassing, there's going to be a online questionnaire, email sign up for future updates. That'll happen this week. And then as we get closer, probably in the next few weeks, there will be a specific comment period for park impacts that lasts 30 days. And when we're ready to start that, we'll put lawn signs in each park with QR codes. There will be flyers posted just to try and get as much communication out there and get feedback from as many people as we can. So next steps, Bob showed our schedule a little bit earlier. So we have our next design submittal in early May. And then we will complete NEPA and start right away. Mostly temporary easements for the right of way, no acquisitions. And then our 95% design is due in July of this year. And then bidding in January and construction starting spring 2026. And then the question at the bottom is, when would council like another update? Questions?
Yes, Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Great presentation. I don't live over there, so this is not going to impact me as much because rarely do I travel to the west side. But when it comes to the inconvenience, right? Because everybody wants to get to where they want to get to quick. And I know you said you got some plans to outreach to people.
Yep.
Do those plans include having signs in different languages too, or no?
Yes, I think one of the slides had some bilingual outreach to be done as well. I think as those traffic disruptions get closer, there will be more public outreach as construction goes on to communicate when that's going to happen. So.
Got it. And you mentioned also that some of the work is going to take place at night.
Yes.
And you said that'll be the full bridge closes.
Yep.
Do you know how many? Or just an idea?
2 to 4 nights.
A week?
No, 2 to 4 nights total.
Oh, total?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
May I slide a question in there? Have you guys spoken with the Polk County Commissioners as well as Marion County, or not yet?
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor. Polk County Commissioner Lyle Morthorse is on the ACT, the Area Commission on Transportation, and so they're very supportive of this project.
Great. Thank you very much. And Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question, so kind of related to what Councilor Brown asked. You talked about the closures. Is Marion Bridge then going to become a temporary bridge for, or you know, like what's going on?
Yes, the nighttime closures are currently going to be done with detours, and then we are still working on plans to accommodate emergency vehicles during construction. But that's why it'll be important to communicate when those are going to happen ahead of time so the public's aware, make other plans. So.
One more
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
Thank you. This question I'm going to direct to Mr. Martin. I know that there's been conversation about West Salem having water get there and a potential new pump station for them. Is this, I thought it was going under the river. Is this the water that was spoken about, and trying to make sure that West Salem would have water if there were problems with the breakage?
Yeah, Brian Martin, Public Works Director. This line will hang from the bridge instead of going underneath the river. Having something on a bridge is a lot, even though this will still be complicated, it's a lot more manageable than having something underneath the river and having to go out and try and repair or do work to it. We do have a couple of other crossings. I believe there's a line on the Marion Street Bridge. If that collapses in an earthquake, we're going to lose that line. We do have one other line further to the north that crosses under the river. So this one will be braced to the bridge and seismically designed to withstand that cascading event. So we know that this line will be there for us when we need it.
And just to confirm, I know that there's plans for improving the pump or some additional pump in West Salem for making sure that water gets out there, unless I'm remembering wrong.
Yeah, I'd have to double check on that. I'm not sure what that project would be in West Salem, but if you've heard it from staff, it's most likely needed. But we will follow up and get that information to you. We have been talking a lot about the West Salem wastewater pump station.
That's what it was.
Okay.
That's what it was. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Tigan, go ahead.
Thank you, and this might be for you, Mr. Martin. Curious about, so if I understand correctly, in general, the design is to increase the size of the footings on the bridge. Like that's where a big part of the strength will come from. And because of that, there's existing city utilities that need to be moved.
Correct.
So I'm curious who bears the cost of moving the conflicted utilities? Because I can imagine if they're delivering services to West Salem, they're pretty big. So is that considered part of the project and ODOT is paying for that? Or is that ODOT saying, sorry, we need to dig some bigger footings and Salem, you need to pay for your improved utilities? Or is it a cost share? What's going on there?
Generally, it would be our cost unless we were there before they were. So there's kind of a prior history right. And in this case, I believe the bridge probably was there before our water line was, since it's hanging from the bridge. We did have some discussions, though it's a little bit more complicated to that, and we still have to work some of those details out. But we have been planning about $7 million in our CIP to upgrade this water line.
Okay. Can I follow?
Absolutely.
In terms of access to Riverfront Park, when I go to Riverfront Park, I go down Water Street and underneath that bridge, and the other bridge, and next to the other bridge. I'm curious, is that access to the north going to continue, or and I'm talking about D Street turning into Water Street? Is that going to, will that be available during this time, or will you only be able to get to Riverfront from the south?
There will be access on Water Street to the parking lot during construction.
Okay, so you'll still be able to go under the bridge while the construction's happening?
Yes.
Okay.
It may be busy with contractor traffic at times, but yes, it will be open.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
May I slide a question here to Director Martin? Is there federal funding available for a project like this? Anything we might get help for? Or do you guys know? ODOT?
I was going to suggest that ODOT talk about the price of the project. I'm not sure. I believe it's all state funds, but there may be federal that they can answer to. But this project has become very expensive due to the inflationary impacts. But go ahead and share.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the money is state money that's been federalized.
Yes.
To fund the project. I think our current estimate is in the $130 to $160 million range. So.
Thank you. And just to clarify a little something, the water line is our cost, but the actual bridge improvements may qualify for some kind of federal funding.
Correct. The water line costs across the river are city costs. There are some reimbursable water line costs on the east side, but a lot of it is city cost.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So you said it's 130 to 160 million?
Yes.
And we currently already have that from the state?
Take that one. I'll give you the easy ones.
Well, I mean, because the reason I'm asking, because if we don't have it and we start on this project, and let's say the feds take their money back, how do we pay for it?
We have $100 million for this project currently, total. That includes design, right-of-way, and construction. We are working with our bridge program to fund the difference. We will be going to construction next year, and we'll have that funding identified for this first phase.
And will any of that phase include us having to pay anything, except for the water line itself?
No.
Okay.
No, the water line is the only reimbursable or unreimbursable utility work that we're doing with the city on this project. I'm fairly confident on that.
Got it. Oh, that's good. And what's that price again for the water line?
Yeah, we had budgeted about $7 million.
$7 million?
Yep, the costs will get refined as they wrap up their design later this summer, but
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you. I yield the floor, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Barney.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation and everything. I appreciate it, and thank you for your question about closures, because I was thinking about emergency services for folks in West Salem. You mentioned that 2 lanes are going to be open for a period of time. I didn't get that in my notes.
So there 2 lanes on the bridge will be closed for consecutive weeks at a time. I think there's 4 lanes across on the river spans currently.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to ask. Years ago, when this whole discussion started, there was some talk of removing the walkway and making the lanes narrower and making adding an additional lane. I guess what happened to that discussion?
I can't speak to what happened to that. I know this project is not designing for another lane being added to the bridge. But I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or I don't think that's been discussed.
Okay, because it was talked about a few years ago as being able to add another lane, right? Anyway, thank you.
Director Martin, did you have something?
yeah, I think if we could also share the schedule, so the length of duration for construction, because that's
Sure.
something that hasn't been pointed out. So as they talk about 2 to 4 days of a full closure, or 2 to 4 nights, or a couple of weeks where 2 lanes will be closed, in the scheme of the length of the project, that's a very short time frame. So maybe you could
Yeah, I
share
think
that.
Bob's schedule had it, but maybe wasn't clear. So we're anticipating 3 to 4 years of construction overall. A lot of that will be from the work platform in the river. So when we're talking about 2 to 4 nights of full closure on the bridge compared to 3 to 4 years of construction, or weeks of lane closures, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big duration of the total construction.
Thank you for that. I have another question. You just said something that sparked interest. You said a work platform in the river.
Yep.
Where would that go?
One of the graphics had white rectangles on it. I think one will come from Wallace Marine Park, and then a shorter one will come from Riverfront on the south side of the bridge.
Thank you.
I don't have the PowerPoint.
That's okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts, questions? No, nothing further. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just real quick, I again want to thank you for having us here tonight. And when would the council appreciate us coming back? Would you want to hear after public comment period, and we can talk about kind of general themes we've heard during the comment period and how we're resolving those? We could do that. And then I would think maybe suggest when we have our construction impacts identified, maybe have that will come back and talk again, if that's something of interest.
I think that sounds reasonable. Did you have a thought on that, Councilor Gwynn?
My only question was, you mentioned distributing flyers with QR codes. Could we get a copy of that flyer to distribute? Like, because some of us are really active on social media, and they'd probably, yes, I'm looking at you, Councilor Nordyke. But I'm sure she would love to post that on her social media.
We'd be happy to provide that. Thank you.
Councilor Teigen had his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Director. I guess I'm really glad you've been here tonight for the fullness of tonight's meeting. We've talked about a lot of interesting things, but one of the things that we have tried to do as a council is really understand what our strengths and weaknesses are as a city, and one of those things that's come across as something we need to improve, but that we don't really have the resources to do, is communicate effectively on behalf of the city to our residents. And I just would really welcome your partnership and thinking very deeply about not just communicating the potential impacts of this work, but over communicating that to our residents, because when this begins, no one who's impacted by this other than the people in the room are going to remember this meeting, and they're not going to know why it's happening. And I've seen enough backups in downtown Salem and across my ward and Councilor Nishioka's ward, that when there's a backup on the bridge and when we go down from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, or there's a layer of ice on the bridge, that traffic across the city comes to a complete halt. And if it's going to be like that for weeks on end, even if it's a relatively small amount of the time of the total project, it is going to be, the words won't be appropriate for a public meeting. And they'll be emanating from the cars of the people who are sitting in line. So I just want to say that, and really just, I think it'd be great for you to come back once you've communicated to the public what you think are going to be the impacts of this, and relay that back to us so we can communicate on your behalf as well. But partnership on communicating this 4 years of work is going to be critical to its success.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilor Tigan. Councilor Barney.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, who would the West Salem Neighborhood Association contact for more information or to schedule some sort of a brief introductory presentation? Because we have our transportation chair and
Yes.
on the Neighborhood Association as well, Nick Forte, and then our chair. So who should they contact?
They can contact me.
Okay,
I can give you a card.
that would be great.
It would normally be our project manager, and he's out of the country. But they can contact me, and we plan to do outreach to the neighborhood associations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anything else?
Councilor Brown.
It follows Councilor Tigan's input about the communication, and Councilor Warney's also. I don't know this. I'm just a guess. So people who use that bridge live outside of Salem. A lot of people do. So how do you communicate with them that this is happening?
That's an excellent question. Because a lot of the traffic is from like Portland folks
Right.
too, right? Going to the coast, going to Grand Ron. We'll do a robust outreach, but I don't know exactly. So we'll have we have a Gov delivery inbox people can sign up for that gets notifications when we have construction impacts and projects that are going on. I'm not sure how we really reach the through traffic.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good point, and maybe we can do some thinking on that and try to come up with something creative.
Right. And like I said, definitely partner with us, because we know at the end of the day, they're going to blame us.
Oh no, you're going to blame ODOT.
It will be trust me, it will be our fault. They're going to email us because they're going to say we're spending money we don't have, and then they're going to turn around and say we are inconveniencing their life. And so however we can just share with the masses, hey, you're going to be stuck in traffic for a little while, find a different route. And somebody's going to say, well, there's not another route. Build another bridge. I won't say any more on that one.
Okay, thank you.
I have, actually, I had a thought when you were talking about how to let people know. Those readers board signs that you have on the freeways might
Yes.
be helpful for that, right?
Yes, variable message boards. That's a good point. And we do use those. Thank you, Mayor. We have several on north of here on I-5 that we could notify travelers. So that's a great point.
Maybe even preemptively, not to do your job or anything.
Yes,
but,
no.
Well, with an 800 number, if you have questions, there's going to be major traffic changes over the bridge in Salem, call, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
ODOT Trip Check will also have posts about when those closures are coming, delays, things like that.
Yes, thanks, Jared.
Anybody else have any questions? I think coming back after your public comment time period would be really great. And
Okay.
just keep us posted through staff, and we'll be ready for you.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thanks
your
a lot.
time.
Great job tonight.
Thank you.
All right, we are moving on to information reports, and there are a lot of them, A through H. I've made an executive decision to not read those titles. Please follow along. If there is something that catches your eye that you want to talk about, stop me. Okay, so any questions on item 6A? 6B? 6C? 6D? 6E? 6F? 6G? Yes, Counselor Varney.
I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed really reading through the strategic plan. Nice photos. I felt maybe it should be a presentation and not just an information item, just because I even printed off pages so that I could have stuff for reference. So just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, Director Martin.
Yeah, we debated whether we should do a presentation or keep it as information. If the council would like a presentation, we could certainly come back and provide one.
How about on a nice light night when there's not a lot on the agenda? I think that. Okay, great. That was item 6. Yeah, Counselor Matthews, go right ahead.
Just because it was brought up about the report. On the front photo of that report, there's a monitor from like 1996. Is that the monitor we still use there? Because if anyone says we're not using things efficiently, and that's the monitor we're using, like, that's the photo we should show them.
Is it real? Is that like a current photo?
I've been told from behind it's an older photo.
Good to know. Okay, that was item 6G. Anything further on that? All right. 6H. As in heck yeah. Moving on to item 7, we have no, and we're on to second readings. 7.2.
Ordinance Bill number 225, an ordinance designating the Criterion Schoolhouse located at 2330 17th Street Northeast, Salem, Oregon, as a local historic resource. Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Okay, moving on to 7.2B.
Ordinance Bill number 325, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 5725 Skyline Road South and land adjacent annexed to the City of Salem, prescribing zoning and withdrawing the territory from the Salem Suburban Rural Fire Protection District. Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Okay, we are on to public comment, and we do have a few folks signed up. Again, I'll call 2 names. The first name will approach the podium, announce your name, your address, or your ward, and you'll have 3 minutes. After the 2 minutes, the yellow light will flash, and then when your time is up, the red light will flash. So, Andrew Camus and Charles Stoneroad. Are you Charles?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Andrew must have stepped out. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Please announce your name and your ward or address.
My name is Charles Stoneroad. I live at 2260 Shelton Street, Southeast. I'd like to bring your attention to the photo that I think Mr. Martinez, the IT guy, was able to get up for me. This is the street that I live on. I live in a pretty crappy neighborhood. I've lived in better neighborhoods before. I lived in South Salem on Barrett Street, where the old DMV used to be located. And what I've learned from that experience, I've lived there for 4 years, and then now I've lived on Shelton Street for about 8 years, is just the inequity and how the roads are maintained. There's a lot of larger picture comparisons I can make, why I think that is. I just wanted to give how ugly the street is to everybody, to just show like what we have to look at. My wife is a public school teacher. I'm a former DMV drive test examiner, gone to the private sector because working with the public, I wanted to kill myself. So that's why my wife has to walk on that street to go to work. She works at the nearby Richmond Elementary. The kids walk on that street. It's not only an ADA concern. I'm the only white man on my street, and I don't think that's an accident, why it looks like that. I've reached out to Public Works. They ghost me. I've reached out 3 times. I've reached out to my counselor. She did say she would agree to meet with me if somebody else wouldn't. And I didn't think that was that great. I've invited them to come to my house, to walk this street with me so they can see it for themselves. I know this is an ivory tower, and you don't go to Felony Flats. So I'm bringing it to you, and I'm frustrated, and I'm mad that I know from doing deliveries and geocaching all over Salem neighborhoods, there isn't a neighborhood I haven't been in. This is the worst street in Salem, and a lot of streets in my neighborhood look like that. And you won't find that in West Salem, you won't find it in South Salem, and I think that's BS. And so I just want to know like why the public funds. I'm a taxpayer, I'm not on any government benefits. We pay taxes. There's a lot of homes they're paying our property taxes just like everyone else, not as much as the wealthy bougie people in West Salem and South Salem, but we pay our taxes. And this is the type of product we get. That is actually what was done by Public Works in summer of 2024. That's actually I was so excited when they were working on my street, and that's the product. When I bought the house in 2017, it was even, I don't even know if it's better or worse because it still looks like crap and it's not safe. The last thing I'll say before my time's over is I'm not going to take any more time. But thank you for listening to me, and I hope something can be done. I don't want the bureaucratic BS response. I want that street fixed.
Mr. Stone Road?
Yeah.
Your time is up. May I ask, what is your street address?
2260 Shelton Street Southeast.
And the reason I ask for that is because I would like an answer to your question. I also live in Northeast Salem, where we have a lot of county and city properties that get real mixed up out there. There's a street parallel to Lancaster Drive that is a mess, and it's a county road. But it looks like a Salem City street. So I'm wondering, if Mr. Martin, if you'd like to comment in any way to this at this point, or?
Yeah, I actually was reading the email earlier during this meeting that Councilor Nishioka forwarded, and he's right, that street looks terrible. And I have not been out to look at it, and you should not have been ghosted by Public Works, so I can assure you that someone is going to respond, and we will be out there to look at it. I'm sorry it took you coming here to this meeting to get to that point. I do know that concrete streets in Salem are very hard to maintain and very costly. This looks like concrete just based on what I'm seeing in the photo, but I don't know that to be the case. But they're some of our worst streets and the hardest and most expensive to maintain, unfortunately. We know that the general fund doesn't pay for street maintenance. We're relying on the gas tax funds to do it. And those resources are limited, and we try to do the best we can with them. Mark Bechtel, I know, has forwarded this to our street superintendent to take a look at. So we'll certainly meet with you and get back with you and let you know what our observations are, and if there's anything that we can do or we can afford with the funding that we have available.
Thank you, Director Martin. Mr. Stone Road, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And for fighting so hard for what you know to be right.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Councilor Nishioka, I didn't see your hand.
Problem. Yes, this is in my ward, and I'm the one that received his email, and I cast a wide net into street maintenance and Mr. Martin and some of the others. There's also projects going on with Shelton's Ditch not far away, so I included those that were involved. And the invitation was for me to come and visit, which I would do, but at the same time, I need you to recognize that even if I came to visit, I wouldn't be able to do anything. It would need to be our Public Works Department that would take a look and move forward. So I believe I got it to those that needed to hear it, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks so much, Councilor Nishioka. We now have Rachel Atchison and Kathleen, is it Streppen, to follow?
Hi there, my name's Rachel Atchison. I live in Ward 3. I'm glad that the levy is going to the ballot. Thank you all for that. But I'm speaking tonight because I'm very disappointed with the mayor. She states a commitment to transparency and rebuilding public trust, then immediately orchestrates the removal of our city manager via what appears to be backroom shenanigans. I wrote to my counselor, who replied, "I believe this council is committed to working together to find common ground." But working together, that would have involved talking to each other publicly, not in a series of phone calls which serve the same purpose as serial meetings. And I would hope that common ground would be fixing our budget issues. The timing of this is terrible, now layering a PR nightmare on top of the budget crisis right before asking voters to increase their taxes to help. It almost feels like intentional sabotage of the livability levy. It's just how it feels. Perhaps there is a replacement candidate for city manager waiting in the wings. Someone maybe who will happily go along with an agenda of privatization and selling off our parkland to make their rich friends richer. I don't know. Anyway, I do want to thank our interim city manager for stepping up in a difficult time to shoulder an incredible workload. Thank you. And also to Councilor Varney for her integrity and honesty in her statements to local media. While I understand that this is a done deal, I would like to remind all our councilors and any concerned citizens who still might be listening at this hour that ignoring foundational documents and abandoning established norms takes us farther and farther away from democracy and should not simply be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Kathleen, is it Streppen?
Thank you. Kathleen Treppa, I live in Ward 7.
Okay.
And I'm a relatively new resident. I moved here about 1.5 years ago. And I am here also to speak on the resignation of the city manager. And I read the recent article in the Statesman Journal regarding his resignation. And as a retired local government professional with almost 30 years experience, I felt compelled to comment. Running a city is a very difficult and complex job that requires an incredible team of dedicated staff. So thank you to all the staff that are here tonight and in the room for your service. Being a city manager is a 24/7 job, 365 days a year. You're constantly on call for counselors, lead staff, and members of the public. There's no magic wand to suddenly produce enough revenue and resources to meet all of the competing expectations for service by the council and the public. There's no superhuman cape to power you through conflicts and problems and juggling acts. There are no easy answers. Managing public resources is complicated, and there's never enough to do everything. So I was really disturbed when I read that Salem city manager suddenly resigned because a supposedly well-intentioned counselor, who was also the president of this council, shared with him that the mayor had told her that the majority of the city council had lost confidence in him as city manager, which meant he could have been terminated at any point. This is like high school. She wanted to make sure his severance was protected according to the article. So if that's accurately reported, that's a shameful situation. It's shameful because the mayor, if that's accurate, broke the confidence of what the other counselors may have discussed with her. That's not good leadership. And while the city attorney may have opined at the time of the article that no serial meeting took place, those conversations by the mayor were certainly a slippery slope. And if the mayor was not truthful in her statements that a majority of the council had shared their individual displeasure with the city manager, well, then that's even worse. You know, there's an appropriate and respectful way to deal with the performance issues or concerns that this council might have for a city manager. It is an incredibly difficult job, and the way this was handled was incredibly poorly done. And it's a reflection on this body, and when you all go out to recruit for another city manager, and I'm a retired city manager, what just happened here gets communicated throughout the industry, and people are aware of what are good cities to work for and what are not good cities to work for. And you don't want to do that to this community. There are rules and norms to guide those relationships. The relationships that you, Mayor, have with your elected officials, the relationship that you have with the staff, and the relationship that you have with the public that you serve equally across this entire community. If you don't like something, there's an appropriate process for you to change it.
Thank you for your testimony. Is Sarah Duncan still here? Okay, that's it for public comment, and we are adjourned.